Is that what you said? You want to see me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, no problem.
Oh, Dean. Update
Well,
stream titles. I don't need to. It's still the weekly current events live stream.
we're live right now.
No, I'm doing the preview. We're about to be live.
Wait till you. I gotta post a few places before you go live. So if anybody could drop the live
We
link,
are
I don't
live.
have it.
I
Yeah.
lied.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yep, we are on Facebook in the event. We are on we are in the For We Are Many support group. We are on Periscope, which is Twitter. We are on YouTube and we are on Twitch.
Well,
Notifications did not go out.
Good evening.
Now it did.
Welcome to the fucking news.
Well, to the motherfucking news. We
thank
should
you for
introduce
joining us.
ourselves. We should introduce ourselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can they see all of us, or is it just this fucking screen grid thing where it's only who's talking?
It changes based on who's talking.
Yeah.
It does. Can we change that so they can see
I
all
made
of
it a
us?
grid. Did it work for you guys?
I see a grid, but I just see it lighting up, so I was just confused. So it's like the Brady Bunch right now, right? Excellent. Yes. One of us is hi.
This is a much different experience being in here than I'm used to because I usually have a TV right next to my laptop. But you know.
Right on.
Anyway, how's everybody doing today?
Fantastic.
Let's do our intros.
All right, so
Austin, shouts out to you there, buddy.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
someone's following
my name is
messages.
Rob. I am your host and comrade in this the fucking news. We have quite a bit to talk about today. We did change the time of the stream. It used to be at 10 Mountain Standard. We moved it 2 hours earlier, and then we were late to our own party. Sorry about that. That's my fault. I've had some personal shit going on over the weekend, but we're still here. We made it, damn it. I'll pass it off to Trisha because she's on the same screen.
Hi, I'm Trisha. I'm still caffeinating, so give me a minute to get with it because I got woke up by a cop knock on my door. Yes,
Oh,
you knocked
me.
like a cop.
That was fucked up. That was fucked up, bro.
No, he was trying to wake me up. I needed to because I fell asleep. Anyway, so, you Sterling.
Mr. Sterling.
Yes.
Yes. How's the music right now? Just quick.
Good levels.
Good levels?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'm just a DJ, so I'm really not here for any official capacity whatsoever, but my name is Sterling.
Bullshit.
Well, then you're here.
No,
to
his
help
name
me.
really is Sterling.
True, yes. First name. Yeah. I'm just a weird dude in space as well as the rest of you watching this shit show go down. And we're going to cover some of that shit show tonight. It's going to be rad. Next.
Yeah. I think that would make it you, Dean.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Dean Paxton. I am the voice that you are hearing right now. And my pronouns are he, him, and we.
Hell yeah.
Dig it. Dig it.
Indeed.
Hi, everybody.
Josh, what's up?
Hey, how's life treating you, man?
It's all right. It's all right.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Josh. I'm here on an official capacity.
All right.
So, how's things going, everybody?
Good. Good. I mean,
Good. Andy.
Slowly, technically, but going.
So I apologize. Like I tried to, I wrote some Bluetooth adapters for my computer that didn't work, so I missed out on the majority of the conversation and don't know what's going on. So,
Oh, well, there's actually nothing going on at the moment. We
Correct.
doing something similar.
well, shit, I can always bring it for him if I need to.
Shouts out to Natalie.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. What's up?
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Butler. I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Josh is my alibi, and good to be back.
There you are. Glad to have you with us, Tim.
Timmy, happy to see you or hear you, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I feel like things get done better when we're just in audio capacity. It's kind of a weird thing that I've come around over the last year of Zoom meetings.
Okay. Well, I mean, whatever helps people get into character, I think, is the most important part.
Or
Well,
be productive, yeah.
If you don't mind, I think it's very fitting that I show that I'm living in a goddamned rundown trailer in Arkansas.
We're in what?
The
We're about
portion of
to.
what needs to be presented right now. I'm
We're in
living
what-
in a construction zone. I'm
You're
living in
about-
a.
We're
These are
about
the
to
opinions
present
we
the
care about.
goddamn news.
These are the opinions we care about.
Exactly. Unite the working class.
So I apologize. I don't know the general forum of this particular cast. Like, somebody fill me in. What's this all about? What do you guys generally do?
So we kind of talk about current events. We cover the facts of the stories generally, and then we talk about our perspective on the stories. Because 9 times out of 10, probably more than that, but at least 9 times out of 10, our perspective as working class individuals is much different than the corporate narrative that is generally portrayed in the media.
Fair enough. Do you have specific subjects you want to cover tonight?
Well, yes and no. I guess we can. Well, actually, before we get into that, I just want to. Obviously, it's on the screen. We have a Patreon now. We're trying to grow this into a more independent, left-leaning media source. We want to have, for example, we want to have any progressive candidates that we can find come on, and we want to amplify their voices. In terms of outside of electoral politics, we want to amplify activist voices. Basically, people that give a shit.
Well, I happen to have some insight into both the activism world and the candidacy world. If you'd like to know a little bit more about progressive candidates, well, I've managed a couple of progressive candidates at this point. Don't mind my look. It's a true story. It's absolutely necessary for the messages of those progressive candidates to get out, and consistently. And I'm happy that there's a forum that can at the very least help to do that. Ultimately, what we're going to need to do is formulate whatever the hell is necessary for us to not rely on the two-party system anymore. I mean, I'm sure you guys are well aware.
Yeah.
So one of my official capacities here is that I'm the tech administrator for the National Progressive Party. The Green Party's been ineffective for a good number of years. MPP, with its absolute belligerent treatment of people who are volunteers and their FEC debacle, likely they're just a thing that's going to go away. I feel that this is a strong left-leaning party that we have representation in. And the fact of the matter is, unless we have a party that starts to support left candidates, then we continue to fail. We need a legitimate party, not some namesake or some bullshit. As far as the activism wing goes, how many of you guys are familiar with Yellow Vest Actions?
We were all considering one actually in January, but things took a turn.
No, things very definitely took a turn in January. January 6th was a fucking blight. It's gonna hurt anybody who's standing up against the government.
Mhm.
That specific action is going to hurt us
It is.
for probably years to come. This is an absolute mess. Why in the world do we need some insurrectionist horseshit to 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 stain activism in general? Yes, I agree that maybe storming the White House was the right idea. Do we want to storm the White House to put Trump back up?
Right. Honestly, that was our
From
general consensus too. Was that, I mean, it's not that you shouldn't have stormed the Capitol, but perhaps not for a tyrant. You know, at least
Well,
that was what I got.
Yeah, okay, so I'd like to piggyback on that.
yeah,
Not only it wasn't only the fact that they were doing it for a tyrant, but they got into the onto the floor of both the House and the Senate, and what did they do? They fucking made a mess. They fucking stood on desks. They fucking stole shoes. I,
they farted in
it took
Pelosi's
so,
office.
it would have been a completely different story, I think, had they got onto the floor of both houses of Congress and started holding their own congressional proceedings. But they didn't have the foresight or the aptitude, yeah, to actually make that happen.
And it
And
was
yeah, well,
not. Listen, I'm 100%, guys. It was a fucking flash mob. It wasn't. You can tell me how it was planned until the cows come home. The outcome was not what they planned. So that tells me it was a runaway flash mob. It wasn't an insurrection, and I agree with Josh 100%. I do think he's absolutely accurate in that it will harm activism. We've absolutely given the powers that be they Democrat or Republican, but mostly Democrat, the reason to clamp down 9/11 style for the next 10 years. Now, if you so much as
Right.
show up with a Jesus love sign, you're going to get your ass whipped with a mag light.
we don't need any more reasons for the Democratic Party to start cracking down on what activism really is. There's a serious problem already with Democrats being a bit authoritarian. We we can't.
a bit is an understatement.
Right.
Well, I mean, the Democratic Party is less authoritarian than the Republican Party is. I mean, it is.
Arguably.
On camera, you know.
On camera, thank you.
No, I've been an insider in a few of these different situations, and no, the Democratic Party is not as authoritarian as the Republican Party is. But are they an acceptable level of authoritarianism? Fuck no, no. We don't need authoritarians. But
Well,
are they less so? Yes.
so this topic actually lines up with just a couple of discussion points that'll we'll have the opportunity to in a bit. No offense, but I would like to give Vicky a chance to introduce herself too.
Oh yeah, she wasn't in the meeting yet, or she had gotten booted anyway and wasn't back in the meeting yet when we
Got
did
it.
intros. So
Yep.
Vicky, take it away.
That's okay. My name is Vicky, and I'm here to learn more and share what I know. And education's key to everything right now, I think. So that's that.
All right. So not to, like I guess hijack it, but the first thing that we wanted to talk about, well, I guess technically we would be me in that instance because I'm the one that set up this. But anyway, so the first thing that we wanted to talk about was the high lead content in baby food. There was a congressional investigation that found that 4 leading baby food manufacturers knowingly sold baby food that contained high levels of toxic heavy metals, according to internal company documents included in a congressional investigation released Thursday. We're talking dangerous levels of toxic metals like arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury at levels that exceed what experts and governing bodies say are permissible. According to the chair on the House Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy, which conducted the investigation. All of those chemicals, arsenic, lead, cadmium, and mercury, are in the World Health Organization's top 10 chemicals of concern for infants and children. As natural elements, they are in the soil in which crops are grown, and they can't be totally avoided. But some crop fields in some regions in general contain more toxic levels than others, partly due to the overuse of metal-containing pesticides and ongoing industrial pollution.
Well, once again, guys, Flint leads the nation. I hate to say this, but Flint leads the nation. Again, we demonstrated quite clearly that no levels of toxic chemicals, heavy metals, or other contaminants was acceptable. So without that notion set forth, especially when it comes to health and human safety and food-borne contamination, I'm not sure this would be even talked about.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, why aren't let's get these names again. What are these names?
All of them, Beechnut, Gerger, Neptune, all of them. These are all the top 10 type of brands.
Why the hell are they not common names to all of our knowledge? Right.
Okay, so
if you had kids,
I had to find that particular spot.
Well, I mean,
it's kind of later in the talking points. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Sterling.
No, go ahead.
So it was a little bit later in the talking points. That's why I hadn't gotten it.
No, well, I'm just saying this is a huge deal. It's a huge fucking deal. And right now, still same bullshit, same spiel.
As we work our way through this, I'm sure that we're going to repeat these brands more than once because, as you just said, people need to know. We see Gerber, Beechnut Nutrition, Nurture Incorporated, which makes Happy Baby products, and Hain Celestial Group, which makes Earth Best Organic. They don't give a shit about our children. All they care about is profits.
Nobody's gonna like my input here, but it's if you want the scientific input, the acceptable levels are actually set too high.
Right.
It's a clickbait set of instances.
It's a what set of instances?
I don't understand.
Okay, so anytime you concentrate a food, whatever's contained in that food is going to be concentrated. If you did the same thing with your own blender and then evaporated off the water or like cooked off the water, all of the heavy metals are going to be beyond the acceptable levels. But the acceptable levels are based on the quantity that the originating product can contain. Like, say it's a bell pepper. You have a bell pepper. This bell pepper per milligram can contain X number of this heavy metal. So when you blend it and then cook off a good chunk of the water, the concentration of that metal is going to be higher, which is the way that people commonly eat it. It's a clickbait thing.
Okay, so I'm just gonna interject here because we're not talking about when you cook something down and you cook the water off of it. Generally, you reduce it by 2/3 or by half. We're not talking about a 66% increase. We're talking about 91 times the inorganic arsenic level, 177 times the lead level, 69 times the cadmium level, and the one that might line up with what you just said is 5 times the mercury level.
Hydrophilic substances always test higher.
Yes, they always test higher, not 91 times higher, not 177 times higher.
I beg to differ. This is clickbait bullshit.
If you're reducing, say, 177 ounces of pureed bell pepper down to 1 ounce of bell pepper, that is impossible. It is not.
Okay, so if you use a high pressure liquid chromatograph for measurement and then run it through shit, okay. What kind of a science background do you have? I don't want to be
I'm just
like...
going to step in here. I actually work with HPLCs and concentrating proteins, so I'm here for you. I got you.
Okay, yeah, so if you pass it through like high spec or mass spec or high spec, either way, like the metals are going to show up at a greater rate than the majority of the hydrocarbons. So that's poor testing. Like, that's just clickbait.
What would you say is
I disagree completely.
behind the clickbait if it were clickbait?
I don't know necessarily.
If you
I'm
just
sure
had
it's I'm sure it's intended to get a reaction in some manner.
of course.
Emily, um, you've already weighed in. Like, you understand these principles generally. Am I incorrect?
I think that mass spec is done on many different ways. You could use the trypsin. So we do trypsin digest where it cuts proteins based on where that is. We're using it to identify what proteins are in our stuff. We don't generally work with metals. So.
I'm sorry, that cut way out, but
Sorry, I'm actually in the lab trying to finish, so I'm like multitasking and I
nice.
different services.
Yay for science people. Thank you.
But there's different ways to use mass specs. I guess what you're asking is, not asking, saying is that does it identify metals stronger than something else? It depends on which way you use mass specs.
Well, okay, so the testing for this specifically was through HP. Okay, so they crashed it out with an HPLC, and then the mass spec. Shit, I need to look up the method for the mass spec because I don't know necessarily offhand. But I did check it out, and it was kind of bullshit when I did look at it. I don't believe this to be one of the greater issues. Is lead in water a big issue? Absolutely. This baby food issue is geared at making you think that we need to attack this thing or whatever. And why?
Personally,
I don't know.
I think that we should not allow toxic chemicals or heavy metals in our food. There should be a very, very, very low allowed amount of this. And the only reason that any amount should be allowed at all is because it's in our fucking soil because we don't know how to not fuck up our planet.
Yes. Poison is always based on quantity. I mean, it's a qualitative thing and a quantitative thing. But ultimately, like, what you're looking at as a poison in these specific baby foods isn't in a quantitative amount necessary to be a poison. I mean, water's a poison if you have enough of it.
They never said it was the levels were at a poisonous amount. They said that the levels were at an amount
Well,
that exceeds.
So I'm gonna quote Jane Houlihan, the National Director of Science and Health, for Healthy Babies, Bright Futures, which they did the expose that this entire investigation was based on. Admittedly, I should have done more research into who they are and what they stand for. That being said, the National Director of Science and Health for Healthy Babies, Bright Futures says, from the time of conception through the age of 2, babies have an extremely high sensitivity to neurotoxic chemicals. That's common fucking sense, first of all, but pound for pound, babies get the highest dose of these heavy metals compared to other parts of the population. So the consequences are serious. All of these heavy metals have been linked to cancer, chronic disease, and neurotoxic effects, but it's the devastating damage that can be done to a developing baby's brain that makes baby food so critical. The FDA does not have any minimum levels for heavy metals in any infant
That's
food
the point
at
of
all.
this. That's the point of this.
And then ultimately, yes, there are no regulations on maximum heavy metal content in infant food in general.
I would say that greater science education is necessary in the general population, so we understand what that actually means.
Allow me to at least just put my 2 cents on it. I think I agree with what you're saying, Josh. I don't have a science background, but just looking at, let's just say, COVID numbers alone and how they were reported, people that don't really know how the data is collected or how the data is being distributed or why the data is being collected, when, where, and so forth, will see the numbers that are presented and have the reactions that are probably intended. But then we find out that these numbers are collected over time and they're just reported in one bulk. I mean, that's just an example of not really having an accurate understanding of the fields that they're pushing onto us. And I think maybe science, I mean, definitely science is one of them. And a situation like this, we should strive, obviously, for no metals, for none of this bullshit. I mean, we overprocess everything; it's killing us. But also, I am aware, especially now, thanks to you, Josh, that there could be. I'm curious as to what else is the motive here. I mean, is it just corporate? Is it just some warring company's game? Is it regulatory? What is it? Obviously, it's a concern, but it's a concern that's put in front of us for a reason.
The reason is because there is no minimum standards currently, and that is the outcome. Obviously, that's the goal of what this exercise is about.
To get a standard going?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think science, no offense, Josh, and I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that a mother of 17 years old who lives in your neighborhood needs to know about gas spectrometry in order to feed her baby, and that's preposterous. Sorry.
No, it's absolutely ridiculous that a 17-year-old mother in my neighborhood should need a biochem degree to feed their child. But it's absolutely unfounded that we start restricting in a manner that's greater than that of the general populace, because the general nutrition needs are the same as adults, only more compact.
I don't know what that means. I just know that I don't want to give kids any food that might be not safe. It's just really
Yeah,
that simple.
no, that's the goal, is to not
100%
give.
agree with this, but hey, I mean, we don't really need to have a back and forth about whether it's okay to. I think that we're all in agreement that we should not be feeding heavy metals to our children. I don't think it's a
All Josh is saying is that if we feed any food in our entire food chain, at the point of pulling it out of the ground, we're going to find issues.
Okay,
Yes,
we have.
And I agree with that.
We have,
and I don't
huge,
disagree either. Yeah,
we have huge issues with the EPA.
Correct.
Baby food is not one of them.
Babies
need the same.
Fucking regulated.
That's the issue, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, baby food is not regulated at all.
Why would baby food be regulated differently than any other food? Can we give adults big doses of lead?
No, because that food is regulated.
It's regulated in the same manner. It's not regulated separately.
Baby food is not regulated. And the fact that these high levels of these metals are in organic baby food more than
literally
regular baby food, that's kind of the issue where I like.
Well, I like
we
this.
haven't even allowed mercury fucking thermometers to be used in schools for decades because we fucking figured out that heavy metals are poisonous. And if a kid breaks a thermometer at school and, gets cut with it or anything like that, where they end up exposed to that mercury, that they are fucking poisoned. So why would any level of it be acceptable in our food? There's something that we need to do about this, whether it be, if we can't fucking grow the stuff in a field because we've polluted that soil so fucking badly, then maybe for baby foods, especially seeing how when your brain is first developing, if you're getting exposed to heavy metals and that is immediately building barrier between your neurons, where your brain cells can't communicate, then you are being put at a disadvantage from the fucking get-go. So maybe if we can't fucking manage to grow this shit in our soil to feed our children with, maybe we should go hydroponic for the baby food and regulate it that way. Of quit fucking growing it in the dirt if you can't even grow it out of the dirt without it picking up some of these things that we've polluted our soil with. We need to do something because this is a fucking problem. There is no amount of heavy metals that are acceptable to feed to a baby.
Amen. You said pretty much everything that I've been thinking through this whole thing. That being said, I think it's time to move on to the first actual segment in this.
I thought that was the segment. That was a good segment.
Yeah,
That was a really good
It
segment.
was a
actually.
segment, but it was kind of an added-on thing. It wasn't. It was its own thing. It was the breaking news segment.
Right. Well, I still enjoyed it very much. I thank all of you and you, Josh. We don't normally disagree like that, and it's good that we do see other sides of this.
I'm the deputy chairman of the state of Illinois Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton. And a lot of people don't understand the Black Panther Party's relationship with white mother country radicals. A lot of people don't even understand that word that Elvis uses a lot. But what we're saying is that there are white people in the mother country that are for the same types of things that we are for stimulating revolution in the mother country. And we've said that we'll work with anybody and form coalition with anybody that has revolution on their mind. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism. And we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. And we're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people. Everybody in the state of Illinois is going to have to be involved or even around the revolution because we're going to have one. We're going to have to do more than talk. We're going to have to do more than listen. We're going to have to do more than learn. We're going to have to start practicing, and that's very hard. We're going to have to start learning, and you learn through practice. We got to start making mistakes, and you learn through making mistakes. We got to start getting out there with the people. And a lot of times we think we're better than the people, but that's the insult, and that's criminal. Think you're better than the people. But we got to get together and learn where it's at. It's going to take a lot of hard work. Education for children is something else. You ought to dig on it. Every sister in this audience. Every sister in this audience ought to get themselves together and come on down and help us with that Breakfast for Children program. You ought to come down and help feed them children in the morning. We have Breakfast for Children because we teach the people through practice, through observation and participation, that people can be fed free. That's the people thing. Socialism is the people. You're afraid of yourself. If you're afraid of socialism, you're afraid of yourself. We know they have our pictures. We know they're looking for us. We know they want us. But we're still saying that even though we could be in a sense, as far as this system goes, on the mountaintop, we in the Black Panther Party, because of our dedication and understanding what's in the valley, knowing that the people in the valley, knowing that we originally came from the valley, knowing that our flag is the same flag as the people in the valley, knowing that our enemy is on the mountaintop, our friends are in the valley, we say even though it's nice to be on the mountaintop, we're going back to the valley. I be in the office every day. I'd be in the streets propagandizing every day. I'd be working with everybody every day. I'd be teaching that solidarity is the thing. The end of a complete wipeout of imperialism is the thing. So if you're going to be thinking about me, that's what Bobby would be teaching. If you're going to be thinking about us, all we say is ain't no thing about going nowhere, getting killed. All we want to know is that you're doing what we'd be doing if we were here. And you got to do that. You can't do it unless you believe that you can do it. In the spirit of liberation, we understand that they want everybody in the party in jail. And we know that if we try to figure out and separate and divide who should go and who shouldn't go, we spend more time doing that than working for the people. So the quick solution, the speedy one, nobody goes. Nobody goes. We all stay right here. With the people. Because we love the people. Okay, you put your hands down now. We say all power to all people. We say white power to white people. Brown power to brown people. Yellow power to yellow people. Black power to black people. X power to those that we left out. We say Panther power to the Vanguard Party. When you leave here, Leave him saying the last word. Before you go to bed tonight, say I am a revolutionary. Make that the last word. In case you don't wake up, then somebody might believe it and you might, end up in what they call a revolutionary happy hunting ground. Say that. I am a revolutionary. Say it when you're going out. Everybody listen to me. Okay? We're going to say it while we're going out. Hey, we been starting a thing called Free Fred. Don't that sound nice? Hey, let's do that. Free Fred. Free Fred. Free Fred. Free Fred. Hey, I ain't even in jail yet.
So, part of the reason that I wanted to open the Black History segment with a Fred Hampton speech is the new documents that were that basically point out that J. Edgar Hoover and his FBI were involved in Fred Hampton's murder. There's quite a bit to unlock or to unpack, I mean, on the topic. But the fight to get these documents started all the way back in 1976. And finally, they were released as a response to a FOIA request submitted 6 fucking years ago. Our government has killed people fairly recently for rising up and speaking out, for feeding fucking children, for teaching their own people how to defend themselves, for policing the police. Our government has killed and probably will kill again. And I think that it's important that we never lose that. Yeah, that we never lose sight of that.
Yeah, I mean, I still find it hard to watch TV. I find it hard to fucking participate in these American customs with people along the lines that Uncle Sam is our friend in any way, shape, or form. And he's our captor,
Right.
I don't know if it's just people that don't get it, or if it's just really uncomfortable to live life that way. I think it's maybe both, that lead to forgetting these things as you go vote, forgetting these things as you pay your taxes, forgetting these things as you put your hands in the air. That's just me, I guess. I don't know.
The United States government does things on a large scale, and then there's also the individualized, I would say, if we're in this case, the tax, if you will, or negligence. I mean, it's like exposure to deadly gases with airmen at Area 51 back in the day, where airmen were poisoned, and the wives would sue, and then the federal government says that, they signed a contract that their lives, they signed their life away when they joined the military, but the wives still wanted cause of death. So, I mean, that's like on the more extreme situation, but then you have the systematic of the machine on the large scale that affect more people than not. And then you have localized situations as well.
Yeah, there's fantastic examples all throughout history. I mean, the Tuskegee experiment should just one prime example. I mean, that should have radicalized everyone. They should have been radicalized before then, but I mean, we just have a tendency to forget how, why.
Well, the Tuskegee Airmen experiment is an absolute blight on our country. There's absolutely no reason that we have to believe that black lives actually do matter in our country, and like that's just one good example. At this point, we have no reason to believe that we have a government that represents us in any manner, which is a disaster. Like, until people are willing to take the actions necessary to make a change in that, we're going to have to continue to live with that blight. We can't reparate that blight in any manner if we're busy not doing anything about it and being good consumers, if you will.
Right.
It's unfair for the people to have to live under the dictatorial means of this current government. by that, I don't mean that government is generally bad. I mean our current government and our historic government have been bad. We need to make a change.
So what would that be? What would that look like?
Ooh, that's broad. Um,
Start with holding them accountable. Like, oh, you committed murder and you want to hide behind a federal badge for it? No, you can go to fucking jail too, just like any other murderer would. As well as anybody who was in that line that fucking, ordered said murders.
Well, you can't stop a battleship in 12 feet, right? So it has historically been fine to commit murder. Are you now telling us that it's not fine?
That's absolutely what we're saying.
Oh,
Right.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
we're
damn
we're
it.
going to have to. We'll need several. I'm afraid we're going to need several decades to deliberate about this.
Well, it's about changing the priorities. I mean,
Thank you.
obviously, yeah. I mean, their priorities are not the people.
Thank you. Thank you. The
Until it's
priority has been about the self. The priority has been about the blue line on that particular notion. But in general, the government, back to the government, what does that change look like? What would be the most obvious and logical place to begin?
Defunding the police,
Defunding the CIA too.
abolishing the CIA
Hmm.
and the FBI. So speaking of the FBI, because I mean, we kind of are
We
getting a little
have
bit off
many
topic
enemies.
here. It's all, yes, we do have many enemies.
and Citizens United.
And Citizens
Yep.
United.
That's
on the
number
list.
one. If you get rid of the money, you get rid of a whole lot of the hassle. I would go so far as to say that all campaigns should be funded by our federal government in an equal amount to each
Public
candidate.
financing.
Well, they were until 1981.
No, they weren't. They never
Okay.
have been.
Never? I see.
No, never.
You should look a little closer into that.
I know I'm dumb. No, they never have been.
Okay. I didn't say you were dumb. Let's be clear. What
Sorry,
I said was
that was jackassery. I apologize.
Well, the thing is candidates have been able to choose for that public,
correct.
but it's always so much less. It's like 2% of anything. Like it's like I've had the opportunity to. I said no. I'm going to raise my. I ran for county treasurer last year or in 19. So it's like with that amount, that choice, no candidate would make the public option choice when it's such a low amount of money to run on, and then you're stuck. You can't go back until you run a different race. If you're a candidate or a campaign or a committee.
We need a majority of the people that are in positions like this to be people that put in shifts. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying a majority of them need to be doing exactly what we're doing, struggling exactly in the ways that we are struggling. And how do we do that? Exactly like what you were all saying, getting money out of this, getting big money out of this, making it to where, truck drivers can actually run for vice president with, that's my idea.
One of the larger concepts that Americans need to adopt in general is that vice president and president don't mean shit. If you get the right mayors in place and you get the right city councils in place and you get the right state legislators in place and you get the right county body in place, then what you have is a general consensus that can override something like the president. Our Constitution, as much as I'd like to wipe my ass with it on a generally, I'd like to just kind of tear it up and start over again because it was the conservative counter revolution to the
Well, you're
to the
exciting,
revolution. But but ultimately, it does allow for control from the bottom up, so long as we have a general consensus and a large group at the bottom who are willing to take that control. You can do it with mayorships. You can do it with state legislators. You can do it with city councils. But that's where it starts. No, nobody in the world starts out saying, "Hey, I'm gonna be president."
Some do.
Yeah, maybe, sure, That's hunky dory, and one in fucking how many ever got there.
There's only so many Mr. Burns out there. I agree.
Or Ted Cruz's.
Or Ted Cruz.
17 years old, he's on a college campus, whatever, saying, I want to rule the world or some crap like some macho crap like that. Back in the day. Yeah.
Dream
Yeah,
big.
he's just a sleazy bastard that makes me want to retch.
Ted Cruz.
Anyway, so I'm going to try to bring this back to the original topic again. We are, just as a reminder, we are discussing the FBI-involved murder of Fred Hampton.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
for
one in a
those
line
that
of many.
that aren't familiar with Fred Hampton or what he right, but you know, that's what we're discussing right now. Okay. Anyway, so for those that don't know, because I mean, actually, I was asked earlier today who Fred Hampton was. No, yesterday. We talk about it in school. Why don't we talk about it in school? How many people knew that, you know, 2 Black Panther leaders were killed while they were sleeping in their apartment on the west side of Chicago?
I did.
Exactly. So there's this, what is the name of the group? The People's Law Office had brought a civil rights case against the federal government on behalf of the families of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark and the 7 survivors. So again, it took 6 years to get these files released after the FOIA request, March 1976. And basically what these new documents have said is that the FBI played a central role in setting up the raid as part of the Bureau's highly illegal COINTELPRO program. This program had previously targeted Black liberation leaders, including Malcolm X, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, Elijah Muhammad, and the organizations that they led. The Senate Select Committee found in its April 1976 report that the FBI had more recently turned its attention to destroying the Black Panther Party. Which, I mean, arguably they did, not just over that. But yeah.
Oh, did a movie come out? Yeah, a movie just came out about this, didn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry. I always kind of considered COINTELPRO common knowledge among the left.
I mean, among the left, yes, but we have to remember that not everybody that's going to watch this has the same education in terms of these issues. I mean, I'm sure people like, you know, the 6 or 8 of us or whatever have been looking into situations like this for, you know, years or maybe even decades.
Well,
But
my concern is that if it takes a big box office movie to bring this to light, we're failing as a community.
I agree, but that's not what brought this to light at all.
Sorry. I should probably get off here.
No, we appreciate you being here. We need all kinds of perspectives. We don't need infighting on the left. We need a working class that wants to overthrow the government. I'm sorry. Continue. This is good.
So a lot of the planning for the raid came down to as it was referred to by the Chicago FBI's office, that they relied heavily on a prized asset. Informant William O'Neill, who was the captain of security of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. So basically, you know, as they do, this is again not some as Josh was saying, this is not something that most of us are new to, but they did the exact same thing that they've done for every big movement. They got somebody close to several of the leaders to turn on them. And that's something that we always need to be mindful of. Sterling, what do you think about this? I don't know how much you knew about.
I honestly, I mean, I knew of Fred Hampton. I knew that he was murdered and that we did it. I mean, I didn't really know the details of it. Just one of those many situations where it's just we did it. But yeah, I'm fairly new to it as well. But COINTEL in general, I'm not new to. Neither am I new to the PSYOP methods we use in other countries and have actually started using here. The implications of what we do on the internet and in regards to those. I mean, all of these things are real. It's just we don't really spend much attention on them. And that is failing as a community. I mean, we're failing to see threats,
We're failing to see threats, but we're also failing to stand up when the need arises.
To the threat.
I mean, there's several reasons for that. A lot of it comes down to the authoritarian nature of our current political system.
Fuck that.
Fuck what?
The current authoritarian system.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
no, that wasn't a jab at you. I promise. Sorry.
I'm just like, wait, what did I do?
Ramp it up. No, I mean, honestly,
I totally agree. Fuck.
No, that was my voicing support there. My bad.
I got you.
We have to remember that they're actually allowed to play American propaganda to Americans on American soil now. Isn't that a new thing? I mean, just in the last 10 years alone, I think is when it was changed. Some shit that we play overseas. What is this radio station? Freedom News. I don't know what it is. But yeah, we have to think that that's just the shit we're aware of. I mean, we all consciously know as a left that we're constantly being bombarded by propaganda. And even the right is aware of it right now. They say fake news to everything, right? Everybody's aware that we're being fucked and fucked with. It's just we're all running around with all these other ideas and all these other distractions, not able to really focus on the fact that they are manipulating us the whole time. They have been.
Can I go history nut here? Because I'm a little bit of a history nut.
Okay.
So when the Constitutional Convention occurred, about 2 months prior, there was an allowance for the dropping of 6,000 leaflets per district saying that we need to preserve conservative ideas, or they called them Tory ideas at the time. Our country was generally founded on a counter-revolutionary conservative ideology. That's generally the Constitution. Those specific ideas have been disseminated throughout our culture, and propaganda is one of the founding ideas that the Constitutional Convention used in order to gain support. The idea of use of propaganda, it wasn't called propaganda at the time. It was called disseminated information at the time, but it was propaganda, and it was a founding idea for this country. I mean, if you look back and really figure out that those 3/5 of a person were really just people, all of a sudden you get a new idea about how things should have been written. The Declaration of Independence was a very left-leaning document. It was a very, very left-leaning document. But anytime you have a revolution, you have a counter-revolution, and it's always a very conservative counter-revolution. That's what's happening now. Unfortunately,
can I kind of piggyback off of what you were just saying, actually, about the Constitutional Convention?
Sure.
So we know that the Declaration of Independence was a very left-leaning document. If we look at how the country was supposed to function under the Articles of Confederation, it would have been far less counter-revolutionary than it ended up being. But the Constitutional Convention was supposed to add to the Articles of Confederation, and instead they threw them in the fucking fireplace and wrote the Constitution.
Well, so the Articles of Confederation the Confederacy was actually more right leaning than the Constitution was. Like there was some pushback. The There was some pushback from people in general, mostly in Virginia and Massachusetts, saying no, we can't remove people's rights to this level. And the last resort was, writing a few amendments to say, hey, you people have some rights, you piece of shit people, whatever. Just leave us alone. We'll let you own 3/5 of a person over here. Um, Ultimately, though, the Articles of Confederation were way, way more right leaning.
I mean, I think that you referred to it as the Confederacy, and I just want to clarify that I'm talking about the original government of the United States of America.
Well,
I'm not
the
talking about
Confederacy was based on the Articles of Confederation.
their form of government was, yes, but it's not that simple. So yes, there was pushback saying that we need to protect individual rights. I totally agree with that. That was their whole point. They were supposed to go back into this document and add protections for the people. But under that form of government, the level of authoritarianism that exists today would have been much harder to achieve.
Well, okay, so there was absolutely no authoritarianism in the Articles of the Confederation, assuming that you were an 18-year-old white male who owned land.
Well,
That's
yeah,
where the idea moved to the Constitution from.
yeah, I totally agree with that. But I mean, we can't even try to argue that the same is the case for the Constitution. I mean, I would say that if you're free, white, and over 21, or not free, if you're rich, white, and over 21, then you're free. If you're not rich, white, and over 21, then you're oppressed. It's really that simple.
The Articles of Confederation carried over to the Constitution, and that's the reason
Okay.
that we have this set of rules. Yeah, absolutely. If you're rich, white, and hell, you can be 12. It doesn't matter. Like that's not important. Rich and white are the key things that make you a person in this country, and I find it abso-fucking-lutely disgusting. I can't.
Josh, I want to add
tolerate-
on to your point about how we're in a conservative revolt, if you will, or Joe Biden, as an example, is even more conservative that people don't even know from alternative to Trump. I mean, we're just like in a race to the bottom of who could be the most like George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan. I mean, it's like the 11th term of Ronald Reagan, but it's a red and blue swap. I mean, we're being fooled to think that he's going in a left-leaning direction or setting ourselves up in 24 or 28 down the line with someone even worse than Trump or more conservative.
Yeah,
I mean, because Biden was a racist for 30 years. I mean, he was a segregationist, like pro full on. And I see black people cheering for him, and I'm like, my heart's breaking because, like, I'm asking myself, like, do they know? Do they know that he's like a racist? Like, probably wore a white cloth, the bed sheets in the
Biden
60s. I don't know,
wasn't
70s. I don't know.
Biden wasn't a racist. Biden is a racist.
Okay, I was about to disagree with you.
Right.
You were like, Biden wasn't a racist, but then you said the second sentence, and I'm like, okay, you got it. You're right. No,
It hasn't changed.
Right. And
No, he
it's
has
very
it.
important that we remember that just because he talks nicer now, just because he's not fucking campaigning for segregation, or that was Hillary Clinton. Why did I say that? Now that he's not pushing fucking segregation issues, right, on the wrong side of history, I guess it's easy to sweep it under the rug. But that history carries through to today and is never going to change.
The level of complacence that people
he
are
has
starting to
millions
have
for him
based.
in the cabinet position.
Sorry. Yeah, the level of
I was saying he has minions to do that for him now.
The level of complacence we're starting
Right.
to develop as a people is unacceptable. Just because somebody beat Trump doesn't mean that we all get to sit on our laurels and hope for a happy someday when everything's equal and everything gets better. It's horseshit. We have a racist piece of shit in charge right now. We have a person who is distinctly and divisively neoliberal in charge right now. And I don't want to say in charge because I know that there is balance of powers. But ultimately, this is a guy who thinks that if you have enough money to play with, you can be part of it. That's unacceptable. This is who we've elected as the better choice. And I hate to say it, I thought he was the better choice. And I'll stand by that. Ultimately, we need to remove the power of people like that from our government entirely. They need no more say. When we have a person who's determined that the adequate distribution of wealth is to white males who can afford to buy in, we have lost as a nation. It's time to stand up.
Agreed. Agreed. So, Rob, am I doing this COVID thing or are you doing this COVID thing? I don't have screen share. Trisha's now Rob. All right.
Okay, yeah, I had to unmute the mic. Go ahead and kick that off. I've got to log him in from his phone so he can still participate while he's outside because there's no smoking in here.
I see. I see. So I'm being handed the reins here, even though I probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, I didn't even think I should have just left my phone logged in and handed it to him. But, you know, here we go.
But here we are. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. So moving on to COVID news. I love this segment. This is my favorite segment. Not true. So it's COVID data. Well, before that, let's get a little into the article here. COVID contact tracing study to date finds children key to spread evidence of super spreaders. Key. We all kind of knew that. I mean, anybody that was against opening the schools full force was pretty much aware this was going to happen. And now we have documented evidence that isn't really going to be accepted by the right. So where are we? But a study of more than 500,000 people in India who were exposed to the novel coronavirus suggests that the virus' continued spread is driven by only a small percentage of those who became infected. Children and young adults were found to be potentially much more important to transmitting the virus, especially within households, than previous studies have identified. According to a paper by researchers from the United States and India, published September 30th. Now, September 30th, okay. Well, we've known this for some time. It's because we're the ones that still have to go to work. They're the ones that still have to go to school. Why is this a big deal? Researchers from the Princeton Environmental Institute, Johns Hopkins University, and the University of California, Berkeley, worked with public health officials in two Southeast Indian states to track the infection pathways and mortality rate of 575,071 individuals who were exposed to 84,965 confirmed cases of COVID. It is the largest contact tracing study conducted in the world for any disease. That's the process of identifying people who came into contact with an infected person. So that's really just a fancy kind of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, from what I understand it. There's probably more digitally to it. Am I right, Dean?
Yes, there is more, but by and large, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now, lead researcher Ramanan Laxminarayan. I think I got that right. A senior research scholar in PEI said aware of, I'm sorry, where am I at? There we go. PEI said our study presents the largest empirical demonstration of super spreading that we are aware of in any infectious disease. Super spreading events are the rule rather than the exception when one is looking at the spread of COVID-19, both in India and likely in all affected places, like everywhere.
Hmm.
This is the first large study to capture the extraordinary extent to which COVID hinges on super spreading. Now, the researchers found that 71% of infected individuals did not infect any of their contacts, while a mere 8% of infected individuals accounted for 60% of new infections. The researchers found that the chances of a person with coronavirus, regardless of their age, passing it on to a close contact range from 2.6 in the community to 9% in the household. The researchers found that children and young adults, who made up 1/3 of COVID cases, were especially key to transmitting the virus in the studied populations. Again, we have to go to work, have to go to school. We're the ones still moving. Kids are very efficient transmitters in this setting, which is something that hasn't been firmly established in previous studies. I don't know why. We found that reported cases and deaths have been more concentrated in younger cohorts than we expected based on observations in higher income countries. I guess they would assume that because you make more money that you would know better.
Not necessarily. You might have better
not.
healthcare access, but that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily be operating on the wisdom to make use of it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tracking with what I'm reading, and it's also unfortunate. I have to admit that I can also generate contradictory, fairly credible research, unfortunately.
Contradictory to the kids being.
Yep. I'm not saying I believe it. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying. I'm just saying we're seeing an unprecedented amount of funding for research and research being conducted, and we're going to get a lot of
push pulls.
Yeah,
Push
I think
pulls.
so. Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it.
Well, I'm curious, from the stats that you see every day with what you're working on, what's your take on it? Because there's been research that I've read that said that, basically kids being super carriers are having up to, like 100 times more live active virus found in their throat, their airways and everything than an older child or an adult would. Which just begs the question again of why the fuck are we sending them back to school at all?
Yeah, that's the you cut to the chase, didn't you? Thank you.
Yeah.
The reality, I think, is that, and I've been thinking about this all week. The reality is that I think, God, there's something similar to Occam's razor, which is the least incendiary. In other words, if you can attribute something to malfeasance versus malice, I just think it will. Kids are messy, man. They sneeze, they belch, they fart, they smear snot and spit, and they're, I mean,
Right.
100% not surprised.
No
All
one
you can
is.
do is teach them some
Even if they're dry.
No one's
So,
surprised.
I know that I stepped out for a minute. I had to smoke a cigarette, but did we? Obviously, we're into COVID now. Did we finish up with the essentials out of the Fred Hampton bit?
Yes, and that's something we can also revisit if the thought occurs to somebody. Please don't hesitate to jump in and share that thought. But right now, yeah, we're on to kids and COVID and the push to open schools and the basically unilateral death cult mentality that everything is fine because
we're actually on your segment of expertise there, Rob, is that food and agricultural workers are the highest risk.
So
take that away.
I actually have quite a bit to say about this, honestly. Being a line cook and having been in the industry for the better part of a decade at this point, So I'd also like to point out that on that top 10 list, there's also head cooks / chefs. So it's not just Well, first of all, it's not the front of house people. It's not the servers. Shockingly enough, that's what I would have thought. But I think there's a bunch of reasons for it. Line cooks and other food workers, but line cooks specifically, tend to abuse substances more. They tend to smoke cigarettes at a higher rate. I guess I'm proof of that.
They're also not on camera. They're not outside in the general public having to watch their P's and Q's. You know, I think it's a lot like factory work. You know, once you get in there, closed doors, it's like, oh, there's COVID outside, but inside, get your job done.
Well, right, but it's not even about the rate at which they catch it. It's about the rate at which they die from it.
Oh,
And I think that has a lot to do with the high rates of cigarette smoking. I think that has a lot to do with the lack of health care and low pay. We have a culture in our field about going to work sick. A lot of that comes down to necessity. If you don't go to work, you don't get paid. If you don't get paid, you can't pay your bills.
that's in every field. It's
It is.
It's
It is.
admired.
Right. I mean, if you come to work sick, then you're the hero. You didn't screw them.
You know, guys, I've been thinking for a long time, many months. You know, I've talked to people who are specialty. You know, they specialize in these areas of study, and my initial common sense thought at the time was that people may be carrying different loads, and the exposure. I mean, in other words, the amount of viral uptake matters. Even though I've been told it doesn't. I just can't let go of the notion that if you're in the back of a kitchen, you're working, you're breathing, you're sweating, there's steam. It's a brutal place, and of course, I'm just, common sense, man. It's not like being in an office where your coworker is 10 or 12 feet away, maybe, or I shudder to think in a classroom where you're where you're facing people, for a long period of time. I think that is, it's perfectly sensible that the back of the house is suffering.
Indeed. And I'd just like to point out here, our friend Austin that joined us last week is in the audience, and he left a comment saying, I
Hi,
heard
Austin.
recently that a bunch of teachers are taking early retirement because they're not taking care of them by keeping them safe. Like, how hard is that the people who we are literally requiring to work, whether it be teachers or healthcare workers or restaurant workers, etc., we expect them to maintain this mode of essential, and we're not even taking the precautions to protect them while requiring them to meet the services we want.
Mm.
He also pointed out that it seems like the rich are able to hire private tutors and such so that they can stay home and not spread. Like, why isn't this a solution that we are making available to other parents too? Because you know how many people I know who are not, education is not their, line of work, but they are now at home parents with the role of being their children's substitute teacher and having to make up the difference there for the lack of face-to-face time in school. And they're not getting assistance for this. They're not getting tutors sent to them to help their kids. Hell, they're not even getting a damn paycheck for having to stay home from work themselves simply to make sure that their kids are cool, because their kids aren't allowed to go to school in some areas, or are doing part-time, like the fuckery we have going on here of people, their kids going to school 1 day a week or 2 days a week and the other days at home. We need to do something to actually help the people be able to deal with this in a better manner, because we're fucking failing right now. And at every turn, we're failing our kids. And what does that fucking say for how much we give a shit about the future of our people?
Agreed.
Well, history's looking, guys. We only get one. Where's Josh? We only get one chance to get this right, and we're totally screwing it up. I think I hate to seem like a broken record. This will be three episodes in a row I bring it up. The answer lies in labor. I think teachers unions, if they literally can and should shut it down if that's their desire.
If
Yeah.
one teacher in a school district gets it, word spreads, even if it's not within the same school. I mean, it's bad enough if it would be, one of your coworkers, there's 20 coworkers in a school, one of them's got COVID. Oh, wait, that spreads the fear. And hey, I'm a year away from retirement. Why don't I retire now? I mean, I think that would be the mentality, if you will, of
Correct.
some of these professors.
So
Makes
I
perfect
want to
sense.
point out that later we're going to be talking a little bit about teachers unions because in some parts of the country, teachers and students alike are striking. Essentially they're protesting having to go to work in packed classrooms and stuff, and we need to. Wow, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Well, we need to focus on.
We'll be talking about that definitely more in depth in a little bit. But in some states, it's not even legal for teachers to strike. For example, right now, I'm in Michigan, the state I'm from. Unless it's changed in the 2 years that I've been gone, it is against the law for a teachers union or a police union, or I think most healthcare unions to strike.
Yeah.
Break the law.
So what power does a union have that can't strike?
Break the law.
Correct.
Fuck the law.
On to the next COVID topic, though.
Anyway. But yeah, just real quick though, right?
Anyway.
They are actually going to be labeling the cooks, food, and agricultural workers, right? So they do get next in line for the vaccine in Cali. I see. That's a good
Yep.
thing.
Yeah, that is good news. I saw that too.
Yep.
One good thing. But yes, carry on.
So there's one good thing. So I guess let's get back to the darker reality of COVID as a whole.
Yes.
So,
yes.
like like people that work on shipping ships. That sounded dumb.
For shipping though, right?
Yes, they're definitely shipping. Anyway, these fucking ships have pretty much turned into sea prisons because of COVID. So there was a seafarer from southern India who is not allowed off the ships, even though his contract is over. So Reverend Mary Davison is the executive director and port chaplain of the Baltimore International Seafarers Center. She used to pick these people up and take them out to have coffee and take them to town to buy supplies, that kind of thing. But since COVID started, this is a quote, since COVID started, we've been taking them Hershey's Kisses with a little handout that says, we can't shake your hand, but we can give you Hershey's Kisses. Right. So basically these people feel like the ships are a sea prison. They sign up to do 6 months on a ship, and then due to COVID, that 6 months is over, and then they're stuck on the ship for another fucking 8 months. Or more. And that could even get longer because that night the ship set sail they were in India. They set sail for New Zealand and then Australia, both of which have similar restrictions. They can't get off the boat. They can't go home. They're just stuck on the fucking boat. It is a sea prison. At any given time, there are more than 1.4 million seafarers plying the world's waterways, according to the International Chamber of Shipping. At the peak, it's been 400,000 seafarers trapped at sea, not able to go home. That was according to the Director of Communications with ICS, which represents the international shipping industry in more than 20 countries. We've heard stories of seafarers being on board ships for 17 months. This is taking a toll on the seafarers, both mentally and physically. And I mean, I understand nations wanting to protect their populations, but at what cost? This is entirely unacceptable. And the globalist neoliberal economy that we work in, that we survive under, is simply the cause of this. We need to get these people home to their families and let them get some much needed time off.
Yeah.
To do is here, can we do one of these COVID tests on you that we'll have the results of in a few minutes and be able to tell if you're clean and clear? You've obviously been quarantined for a long fucking time. So,
What's one hotel for 2 weeks?
Right. Right. At least let them get the fuck off the ship. My goodness, you know, like life on the sea ain't hard enough working in shipping. You know, they might want to stand on some solid ground again for a minute. Where's our compassion?
I mean, honestly,
Where's our... Go ahead.
well, I mean, just think about it. I mean, from even a dirty capitalist perspective, like, yeah, you got a hotel that's really not seeing a lot of travel in some areas. Like, yo, what if you could ensure that these people would stay in your building and you could test them before they go to the general public? And now your business operations for right now are actually getting seafarers home, and you're maybe making some money doing it. I'm like, why aren't we thinking about that? Fuck, something.
Right, people who are all about let's fuel the economy.
Right.
Okay, fucking do it and take care of people.
How about we don't bail out Holiday Inn and we just make Holiday Inn
else have anything to put in on this, or?
I'm good.
I got a better idea. How about we seize Holiday Inn and use them to house these people?
Bingo.
I agree. I agree.
I do have something to put in, but you know. Go ahead.
Okay, just 1 second. She's pointing out that this pandemic is showing the disparities between the rich and the poor, and the grasp to try to hang on to a middle class is and has been failing. Dean, give it to you.
Over you, Dean.
No, you're. I almost think this needs its own show. No,
I don't disagree.
Yeah, no, I mean, we can
vibrated.
Yeah, we can keep rocking. Bottom line is, when they write the books, I'm just speaking to anyone who can affect their own lives and the families that they're responsible for. Make sound decisions.
Make smart
I would
choices.
love.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would love to talk about wealth inequities. I would like to talk about race inequalities. Obviously, the numbers show that we have a huge race problem in this country. And if this doesn't open our eyes, I don't know what can. You're on your own. Everybody on this call, everybody listening to me right now, is on their own. You've got to get through this thing however you can.
Agreed. So, as you can see on your screens, the next topic is major political happenings, which is kind of mixed together with international political happenings. And I mean, honestly, the first topic under this segment is about education. So, I mean, we're kind of keeping right on track here. So, educators around the world are seeking to get rid of exam-based learning. I think that it never should have been the approach that we took to begin with, frankly. But anyway, Tony Stack, a Canadian educator and director of education for Newfoundland and Labrador province, was developing a new way to assess children even before the coronavirus happened. The decision to scrap end-of-year assessments after the pandemic struck presented the chance to put the deep learning approach into practice. It offered an opportunity for an authentic learning experience outside some of the constraints of an exam. The alternative model, it's already used in 1,300 schools across 8 countries, prioritizes skills in independent thinking and set a way forward for a more ethical approach to assessment. Skills that students need to learn through the pandemic cannot be assessed in a single test. And I mean, I think a lot of people have, gone to school, right? So I don't think that anybody would agree that what we're doing is currently learning. We memorize things for a multiple choice test, and then we forget them as soon as we take the test.
Right. Biological studies on it have already proven that rote memorization is not effective because of that memory dump. As soon as you're done taking that test, your brain is like, fuck, I have to make room for all the shit for the next exam, so we're going to just dump that. It's not teaching anybody how to apply those skills or knowledge in real life situations. It's just going, how well can you parrot this fuckery back to me?
Can I butt in here? Because someone that's been to college for like however many fucking years. Basically, that's exactly how it works. So you have like your finals, where you will have 4 or 5 exams in 1 week that are covering the entire semester worth of information. So it is very much crammed the night before or the hour before, so you can get ready for the next test later in the day, kind of thing. I couldn't tell you half of what I learned in undergrad for that reason.
Right. Your brain is like, I no longer have room for this. On to the next test. It's fucked. We're doing everybody a disservice while overcharging for it.
Yeah, which is a pretty uniquely American problem too.
Yeah.
So Bill Lucas.
Speaking of that too, in England, when I went to school there, they teach totally different. So like you have one assessment for the entire semester, but it's going to be a really long research paper, or it's going to be this poster you have to make on something you present or you like research for the whole semester, or a presentation for that matter, or lab work. But like you're getting once, and it's going to be something you learn throughout there and you're applying it, rather than like, so it'd be like a written out exam, like, hey, you learned everything about E. coli, now tell me about it, kind of thing.
Right.
Not like, what's this answer?
Right. I find that to be much more conducive to actual learning. And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed in my pathology classes and stuff like that too. That they weren't going here, wrote, memorize, and answer multiple choice or anything. They were presenting it just like that. Put it in your own words, of describe this process in the body and how it works. And that right there, the fact that you have to think about that, to put that in your own words, means that you're actually taking the information in and going to retain it in a better manner and make use of it. You know, the shit that, you know, like what would drive me insane, say in biochemistry, where one of our first exams literally made my fucking brain explode on site, because it was literally a list of a shit ton of different chemical structures. Have fun, name them all. Fuck me, you know? Where, how can you possibly memorize on the spot, you know, and on the spot, I mean like in about a week, maybe 2 weeks of lectures over these things, of, you know, a list of 150 different chemicals, and be able to just name them off right off the bat. I mean, unless you have a pristine, you know, memory that just commits everything to this file automatically, you know, it's not a productive way to teach. We need to shift gears more towards what you were referring to there, of
Right.
making use of that knowledge. Put it in your own words. Describe this to me.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
So Robin, sorry, what?
You're talking about how the education in England was different. And it's important to note that this push started in England before the pandemic. So these people that we're talking about that are still advocating for it today are probably part of the reason that the education that you got there was much more valuable than the undergrad education you got here in the US.
Yeah. What I was trying to say is, me and you were having this conversation. I don't know what day it was anymore in our life, but it seems like, I don't want to like bash teachers, because I do a lot of work in other ways, but it seems lazy. You take the Scantron, so like students will fill out bubble by bubble, A through E, whatever they thought the answer was, and they just shove it in this machine, and the machine grades it, and that's that. Like, it's, the teacher is losing out on that too. There's no personalization to these exams. I took a standardized test through the whole nation for organic chemistry once. So I don't know. It's just very much lost its spark of teaching and learning.
Right. And according to Bill Lucas, he's the director for the Center for Real World Learning at the UK's Winchester University. He says the pandemic has exacerbated all these problems that were already there with exams. Traditional assessments unfairly standardize children of different abilities that fail to capture essential skills, and they put young people off through its rote learning, one-size-fits-all approach. Survey after survey says creativity, critical thinking, and communications are what we need. Exams don't assess any of those things. COVID has forced us to ask the question, do we want to go back to where we were, or do we want to stop and think?
I go with option number 2.
Exactly.
How about we reassess this and start making it work in a manner that actually does work? Because anybody who's worked in education, you know, at least all the teachers that I've spoken with about this find it just as frustrating because it's doing their students a disservice to be, you know, required to do the testing in these manners. We need to reevaluate what the fuck we're doing and fix it.
Agreed.
We have an opportunity right now to do that with how everything has just got clusterfucked with this pandemic. Okay, time to reassess and make it actually work, whether it be, you know, exploring some different routes that are taken in other countries as far as how they teach. You know, that is something that I know is being explored in some of the programs in Flint. One of my friends is a teacher at a school that was funded by, I should say was, because I don't know if that program is still going on, but when we first started dealing with the lead poisoning issues, U of M funded a school that was using other methods that are used overseas to actually help these kids not just make up the deficit in their learning, but be able to get on par with other kids their age and advance ahead. And it's because they were teaching them in different manners that actually get through and actually, you know, learning the material where they could make use of it. They threw rote memorization out the fucking window. And I think we need to do that across the board. I digress.
We do have some schools here in the U.S. though that are international baccalaureate schools or IB schools. My kids went to one, and they don't focus on memorization learning. They focus on applying it in the real world. They have to apply it to their community. They have to be able to show application. They have to do their own separate research, and that continues. And then they get their world diploma from the globally accredited schools when they do this. We do have some here, but there's like only like 500 in the whole U.S. And I think if we implemented that more, then, you know, whatever, because my kids were public school kids, so they still had to take the standard testing, but they scored so much better. And the kids that are in these programs are doing a lot better throughout the pandemic than the memorization kids.
Agreed. I mean, I think it's safe to say that we're all in favor of this. I mean, I guess I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but we all know that our education system is fucked. And basically, current education systems lacking critical thinking and skills building. Educators, legislators, activists, fucking everybody should work to achieve this goal. How, as the left, how can we help?
We have to force them to put more money in the school so that they can make these changes and do better.
Well said. Anybody else?
Well, we definitely don't need fucks like the Scamway heiress running our education department on a federal level.
Austin said, I agree, not every teaching method works for every student. Again, well said.
Right, you have to use a variety of teaching methods because nobody is going to learn everything in just one manner. Some are more visual, some are more hands-on, some, like me, require both. You know? There's so many things that we can do to teach kids how to actually put the concepts they're learning to use that, you know, standard across the board for decades we've not been doing. I'm glad to see there's at least some more of these schools coming up like what your kids go to, Vicky. I think that needs to be something that the rest of our public education system learns from, and co-ops takes that on board because, you know, the results speak for themselves. There's no fucking arguing that.
I agree. And it's very hard to get your school certified by the global universities to do it. And like the schools here that my kids go to they went through an insane amount. You have to recertify every year, but it takes a lot. And that's why like there's less than 500 of them in the US, period. And most of them are in California or, you know, the coast over there. And I'm sorry, I'm tired.
The coast over there, the East Coast.
I'm in Nebraska. I'm in
Oh,
the middle. So it's like, you know, but we've got the Omaha public school system is where my kids go, we have got one junior high and one high school that have this. That's it. If they start it in the elementary, it's also going to help them establish more than one way of learning.
Absolutely. So I think I want to close out this piece, I guess, with an Albert Einstein quote that is very relevant to what we were just discussing. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its entire life believing that it is stupid. Albert Einstein dropping the mic from the grave, you know?
For sure.
Absolutely.
So we're
So
moving
the next thing is, I think, a very important thing. I seriously doubt that it's actually going to happen.
Okay.
But a U.S. Representatives Ted Deutsch, Jim McGovern, Jamie Raskin, and John Katko today, well, it wasn't today, reintroduced a bipartisan constitutional amendment to get big money out of politics and restore democratic power to the American people. They're calling it the Democracy for All Amendment, which would affirm the right of the states and the federal government to pass laws that regulate spending in elections. The Democracy for All Amendment, that's the same line. Hopefully, this will reverse the concentration of political influence held by the wealthiest Americans and large corporations capable of spending billions of dollars in our elections. If none of you know, the Citizens United ruling happened, 11 years ago? The Supreme Court ruled that corporations are people. If corporations are people, I will agree that corporations are people once we execute one.
Damn right.
Facts.
I wish we were recording. I mean, you could tell me that you're going to drop some shit like that. Missed opportunities.
Yeah, right. So basically, the legislation was announced. I was right on the 11th anniversary. I'm kind of stoked about being 11 years. The legislation was introduced on the 11th anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling, which gave corporations and America's wealthiest individuals the ability to corrupt our elections and undermine our democracy. Corporations are considered people that can donate as much as they want to any political campaign. I don't think we even need to have a drawn-out discussion on why that's bad. I think that even on the right, most Americans agree that money in politics is a fucking problem. The only people that don't agree are the capitalist reactionaries.
I don't think anybody can or would argue that all this is doing is removing power from the people when we allow corporations to buy off our representatives. We no longer have the representative government we claim to have if they're not fucking representing us. If they're too busy representing fucking GM, Pfizer, Amazon, etc., whoever the fucking party is that is literally committing legalized bribery there, they're not considering what their fucking constituents, us, their employers, want to actually happen. They're not giving a single iota of a flying fuck, and we're not giving them any incentive to. We need to disallow this legalized bribery across the fucking board. I've said it before, I'll say it again, it needs to be made criminal. Lobbying should be a crime. Because
in most countries, it would be.
Right. It is literally violating the very fucking foundation of what our fucking system was supposed to be as far as voters having a say over what our fucking employees do, especially concerning our money, because this comes back to even the foundation of this country, period, of taxation without representation. Suck my dick.
Austin said, absolutely, the right and left are in agreement to this. Money has to get out of politics. Politicians should only be funded by the people, not by private corporations.
Thank you. Absolutely. And the only motherfucker out there doing that and setting that example is Bernie.
So I didn't finish that comment. Lobbyists, the end of that comment was, lobbyists are literally killing United States citizens. Yes, I hit the table to drive that point home. Lobbyists are literally killing us.
I think you did it to a beat too,
Yeah, you did.
right?
Natalie commented, as long as the school administration doesn't try to add more students to the student-teacher ratio to qualify for more funds. You know, we kind of probably got that comment a little later than it was posted, but 100%. Teachers are already expected to do too much. Can you imagine, you know, the average person going into a classroom and trying to teach, let alone, you know, discipline, because we know that that doesn't happen at home as much as it should, or in the ways that it should. But imagine trying to go into a classroom as a regular person and trying to teach 30 screaming children.
Good fucking luck to you. Yeah.
How big were our classrooms? I mean, I'm just trying to think back.
I mean, mine, granted, I'm younger than, you know, say Dean or Trisha, but like when I was in high school, our classes were generally 25 to 30 kids as well. And it was non-functional. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
That produced a lot of winners. I'm not saying in your case in general. I mean, just overall. Like that's the way to go, clearly. Clearly, that's a winner.
Right. Just pump them full of ADHD meds. Let them go.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Natalie added on to lobbying should be a crime, as Trisha was saying. No revolving door for these politicians either. That is a serious fucking problem.
Well, you know, they
actually,
did.
I can't believe that I didn't mention that as part of this.
They did outlaw
you know,
corporations at one
people-
time. I'm just saying.
What?
They did abolish corporations at one time. We didn't, but it's been done.
But yeah.
we need to do that.
But that's not for right now. Not for right now.
That's for when the revolution comes.
Can we at least start with abolishing their identity as people? Because corporations are not people. God damn it.
Yeah, I can't drive that point home enough either. Again,
Right.
I will believe you when you say that a corporation is a person when you put it on the fucking guillotine.
As long as
Like-
we consider corporations as people, in my opinion, they are the voters, so we don't matter because we're not the big money. That they become the employer.
Exactly.
Can I interject real quick?
Austin said, for some of my high school years, I went to a charter school and our classroom still had about 20 to 25 students. And I'm sure most of us know this, but charter schools are for-profit education and they're still cramming, you know.
And they're
kids in
shitty.
classrooms.
Right, and a lot of it, I mean, this is at least a perspective I've gotten from friends who are teachers at some of these charter schools around Flint, that they are so corporate driven that that's literally what they are prepping those kids for, is to shove them right into corporate placement in the workforce. And
With no
they're-
fucking idea what to do.
Right. Right, like how are we seriously indoctrinating little kids with this fucking toxic level of capitalism of like, so if we haven't hammered you hard enough with this fucking American dream bullshit that everybody needs to be a millionaire or you're worthless, now we're allowing charter schools to do that because that's the basis of their shit is fucking corporate profit. It's disturbing.
Okay, so I just want to interject here. I noticed Sterling was trying to say something, but I think we should wrap up this piece and move on to international happenings after this. But go ahead, Sterling.
Did we fuck you up? We fucked
No,
you up.
well, actually, no. I was going to explain that I'm learning what funky means in musical terms. I mean, I heard it before. I kind of got it, you know, funk, jazz, all this, but like now I feel it right now. I feel what funk is, and
Good.
And what it's expressing. Yeah.
yeah, and it's fucking rad.
It
It's
really
just
truly
so
is.
rad. Anyway,
Moving to international
international news.
news.
Wait, I just noticed this before we move on, I would like to point out that Austin just said something about tech companies might soon be allowed to make their own governments. What the fuck?
Well, think about Disney.
Yeah,
Think about
so-
what Disney is. Disney is a nation state. Disney had help from
and
what
there's
became
proof
the
of that.
CIA in its inception. Disney is the Vatican. Anyway, my bad.
I mean, you're not wrong. If you look at what Walt Disney's vision for Epcot was, it was supposed to literally be a self-sustainable city that was self-governed.
Oh yeah. There's a really deep
Granted, you know, they
rabbit
kind of
hole
corporatized it and monetized it, and it didn't become that at all.
there.
But
It's still
corporations have been playing with the idea. Yeah, exactly. Corporations have been playing with the idea of making their own fucking governments for decades. This isn't new.
They're close.
I haven't actually read the article, so I don't want to get too into that.
Right.
But this isn't new, and
We should do a Disney episode.
I don't think we should do a Disney episode. There are so many rabbit holes to go down.
We need to start a list.
No
Yes.
pun intended on that, Rob.
You coined the term parking lot this discussion.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Dean, I'm unofficially putting you in charge of the parking lot discussion list.
Google is on there. Google is on there, and now Disney. We're gonna get weird in the parking lot.
The fascist Disney
Amen.
empire. Gotcha.
Okay.
Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Well, I mean, we can do this, you know.
So,
Let me stop you. What we can do, since we've been, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to show the audience and future viewers how the sausage is made, but we had talked about adding a second weekly stream. Perhaps that weekly stream, since we do generate so many sidebars, so many parking lot issues, could deal with those.
That's a good idea. I like that.
yeah, that is a good idea. I mean, ideally, I'd like to stream 5 days a week. We just don't have the resources or manpower to make that happen yet.
There aren't
But
enough
we're
hours
gonna
in the
get there.
day.
We are working on that.
Exactly. I mean, not when you gotta, you know, go to work and pay rent. This week, actually, while we're live and there's people watching and we're all here,
People
this
are
week I
watching?
am.
Oh shit.
Yes, there's 4 on Facebook and at least 1 on YouTube. But anyway, well, the Facebook numbers keep fluctuating. 4 is actually the lowest I've seen since I've been monitoring the comments myself. But anyway, what was I getting into there?
Live stream.
This week I actually have more time than I ever do. So, I mean, if anybody this week is willing to, you know, record a segment, we can go down one of these rabbit holes. If anybody this week has the time to do extra live streams, get in touch with the page. I should have the time to do something. You know, let's grow. It's on all of us. And now,
I got-
moving to
I-
international
wait.
news.
Hold on, I do have something to add on this.
Damn it.
You know, sorry. I
You're
promise
good,
I'll
Dean,
be.
go ahead.
I'll promise I'll be brief and entertaining. If nothing else, I'll be entertaining. So,
All right.
I think the view. I think this is. How shall I put this? These guys don't want to pay for basic services. So now we're saying they have to administer a government. I mean, I just don't see how that's going to work. I really don't. And you know, I do know the nature, depth, breadth of the kinds of people that they're trying to attract in this particular part of it's Nevada, right? That yeah.
What's Nevada?
We were talking about corporate governance, corporations establishing governance. The story was that it originated out of Nevada, was entertaining the notion of allowing corporations to do that, right? So I just don't see how asking them to spend billions upon billions of dollars of their own money to run core city services, education, health, all of the things that are necessary to function, to have a functioning society. I just don't see them doing that.
I don't know.
don't wanna
that it's... I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean, these are tech people, right?
Yeah.
The majority of these folks are they do not care a whole lot, guys. I'm just sorry to say that they don't care a whole lot about the health
I
and
don't
well-being of
think
the communities that they operate in.
I don't think that Lucasfilms Disney, is really necessarily plotting to take over the world or even a portion of Florida. But I do know that Disney's motives, once we go down that rabbit hole, it will be clear that they are beyond financial. They're beyond that. Disney is he was a weird dude. And weird dude. I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. They want to make money. It makes no fucking sense to build
why
an
would they
entire new society for what are you doing? Disney dollars now? What is this?
No, my point is the point of what I'm trying to make is their job, if they're public, is to make money, and if they've got to pay for people to fix roads, that's going to work against their bottom line. I just don't see this as feasible.
I don't necessarily know that I agree with that. If they are levying their own governments, then that means that they're going to be levying taxes. And if they're levying taxes, that means they can way overcharge the people that live in their shitty society.
But this is corporate America. If they're levying taxes, they're not going to do the people's work. They're going to put that on the quarterly report.
You guys,
that's exactly my point, Dean. I don't know that you intended to prove my point, but you definitely just proved my point.
You're still in the realm that Disney is normal, and we will.
Well, I'm not talking about Disney, though. I'm not talking about Disney, guys.
In
I'm
general,
just saying,
though, I get what you mean.
I'm not talking about Disney. In fact, I think this is amateur hour compared to what Disney is doing today.
Yeah.
Again, that could be the fascism of Disney is definitely going to be its own segment.
All right, fair enough. Moving on.
Parking lot. Okay, so in Greece on the 4th, there was a series of rallies mainly composed of students and teachers against the reactionary measures that the New Democracy government is trying to pass in university and schools. More than 4,000 demonstrators came out into the streets of Athens. There were demonstrations in Thessaloniki. I butchered that. Whatever. In other cities in Greece defying the ban imposed by the government. The rally took place despite the fact that they have a lockdown in Greece and despite the fact that the government specifically forbid any public gathering for 1 week. The law that the government is trying to pass in the parliament will eventually drastically reduce the number of students that can study in the public university. That's a problem. And of course, the ones excluded will mainly be working class students that don't have money to pay for private education. Go figure. The teachers' trade union and the public servants union openly called on the workers and the youth to defy the ban and come into the streets. I think that we're seeing a lot of uprising all around the world. Actually, the next one's about Russia, and that's been going on for months too. So I think that this needs to be a more... We know that strikes work. As much as they try to act that's like strikes don't work. Strikes work. I forgot where I was going with this, so somebody else can take over. I'm sorry.
Strikes do work. Russia. All right.
India. Strikes are they're a necessity.
So, I mean, before we get too much into there we go. Before we get too much into the story itself, I want to play a video. Why?
This is what was confusing me.
What?
Where to go to lead this or direct this?
Vicky says she's getting robot voices again, so something's cutting out in the audio.
Are you getting a robot voice from me?
No, I'm not. It could be her connection, though, to be fair. I got signed out of Zoom, so that was really weird, but I fixed that now.
No, everybody on the stream sounds fine. And I was on mute, so.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. There we go. So while this is playing, I'm going to start talking about it. The protests in Russia just seem to keep growing. Putin and his cronies keep making the wrong move at every turn. I'm not even a little bit surprised that Putin got Navalny thrown in prison. But Russians are starting to stand up to Putin. They are no longer buying into their fear of Putin.
People who are supportive of Navalny and want him the fuck back out of prison, they're not going to tolerate the tyranny that is coming out of Putin and his cohorts as far as the situation is concerned. They're literally only targeting him because of his political leanings.
So essentially what was going on, how do I move? None of us speak Russian anyway. Damn it. If it'll let me. It won't let me. Okay, let's talk over it, whatever. Supporters of Navalny rallied in Moscow and St. Petersburg after a court sentenced the Kremlin critic to prison. A massive police presence has been deployed to deal with the protesters. That's what we're seeing in this video. Police cracked down on demonstrators in Moscow on Tuesday after a court in the Russian capital sentenced opposition leader Alexei Navalny to 3.5 years in prison. Russian authorities arrested more than 1,400 people at rallies across the country, according to the OVD Info monitoring group. In Moscow alone, police detained over 1,000 protesters. I don't think it's acceptable, guys.
No.
I mean, look at the severe number of fucking soldiers out there just to fucking, like, at what point did protesting become a fucking why the fuck are we seeing stuff like this? You know, across the board in areas that have authoritarian bullshit happening. Like, these people have every right to march in the streets and demand his release. That is their right as a human being to speak up. And they're getting cuffed for it. Fuck that police state bullshit.
Oh, it's only going to get worse from here, I think. I mean, this isn't even as bad as it's been. You know, we're not even there yet. We're not even like Vietnam yet. I mean, I don't think we are. We? I don't think so.
I mean, that's a matter of propaganda. I don't think Vietnam was as bad as we're told Vietnam is. I don't think Cuba was as bad. I am 95% certain that Cuba is not as bad as we're told it is.
Really?
I mean, most of the opinions that we hear in America are people that left
cut out there,
that did not want any part in the revolution. And you know, we talked about how Stalin cracked down on dissidents and really wanted to discourage people defecting. But yet Castro did the exact opposite, and we criticize him too. He let the people that wanted to leave. He encouraged them to leave. But you know, he's still a fucking tyrant, according to American history.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like we have our entire fucking history, I think, is just generally warped. And we're just coming to terms with it, you know?
Yep.
It's kind of weird.
Right. Realizing just how much propaganda we've been fed about other places in order to condition us to looking down on the things that they're doing there as if those things couldn't be beneficial to them or to us. And it's a mind fuck.
Yeah, I would say it's the real red pill. You know what I mean? Like,
is everybody cool if we move on to the next thing? Actually, Austin just said, here in the United States, I've seen cops run over protesters multiple times. Actually, yeah, I don't know why none of us brought that up ourselves. He's absolutely right. There's probably half a dozen or more videos of exactly that happening. So, I mean, are we anybody better than Russia? Are we any better than China? I don't
There's
really.
a
I don't
culture
really
that
think we're not.
glorifies that too. There's a culture that glorifies that here. I mean, all
Right.
those memes and videos of people getting shot or ran over, just add some Trumpism to it, and then there it is. That was the internet for an entire year.
Absolutely. Them fucking fascists are celebrating it and shit. Like, this is what we all need to do. I mean, fuck, look at them joining in on it. How many people who were Trump supporters have landed themselves in jail or in some form of trouble, at least, because they thought it was a great idea to drive into a crowd of leftist protesters and try to fucking murder them for, exercising their First Amendment rights. But we're talking about cunts who think that the constitutional rights that are protected only apply to them, not to anybody who disagrees with them. So if it was them getting run over by cops, then they would have a problem with it. But since it's people on the left who are out here protesting, murder by cop and things like that, okay, we can kill them.
Damn it.
We also need to again bring this line of thought back to the intersectionality of the difference between a societal system and a financial system, because these same motherfuckers will try to tell you that communism and socialism are the problem in those countries. No, the fucking authoritarianism is the problem, and it's just as strong here with our capitalist bullshit as it is in any fucking communist or socialist or any other fucking type of country. The problem is the authoritarianism.
Man, actually, I want to put in a little bit of, I guess it's from my personal life that I feel like is relevant right now. Today, I saw my conservative grandmother for the first time in about 10 years. And that went well, yeah. So she made a comment about how she thought that, or how she hoped that she didn't offend someone because they probably voted for Biden. Okay, and then she went on to call Biden a socialist. And I mean, I did not want to get into politics with her, but at that point I had to say something. I said, no, he's fucking not. You voted for a fascist. You're defending a fascist. I don't want to hear a goddamn word about how Biden is supposedly a socialist. Anyway, that's that. Austin had made another comment, said, I believe when we protest here, it echoes throughout the world, and when they protest there, it echoes back here. What you're describing, Austin, is solidarity. And it's important. It's necessary. Natalie commented, American history and its teaching books hide a lot of truths. That's a small portion of why we're doing what we're doing. Our education systems, especially when it comes to history, are fucked and more reactionary than I think anybody wants to admit. And the memes that were going around during the Black Lives Matter protests was saying people that protest in the street are just speed bumps. And yeah, that's literally what they said.
That is what they said.
And it wasn't just memes. I'm pretty sure I literally heard Fox News talking heads say that.
Tucker Carlson. News.
Fucker Carlson.
Oh, man. We need to vote for a cartoon.
I'm sorry. Anyway,
the next candidate that comes up, the next candidate that comes in line that gets my support needs to be a cartoon, a meme. Let's vote for a meme. I mean, we've made a meme currency, Doge, right? Fuck it. If it's a joke, let's make a joke out of it. That's all I'm saying. This is the mindset behind Harambe. This is the mindset. Everybody's like, oh, you're fucking the system. You're throwing your vote away. You're so immature. I'm like, no, it's a joke. The whole thing's a joke. Why not make a bigger joke? It makes more sense.
I can't even disagree with you.
My bad.
No, you're good. You're good. So I think I want to move into the next segment. Women's rights, rape culture. I mean, this is a newer segment in our in our stream, and it's gotten a lot of talk lately happening. Mostly conservative white men that are afraid of women having any sort of power. AOC posted a video on Instagram, and the conservatives acted like she re-crucified Jesus or something. But anyway, I'm going to start off by playing that video.
The reason I say this and the reason I'm getting emotional in this moment is because these folks who tell us to move on, that it's not a big deal, that we should forget what's happened, or even telling us to apologize, these are the same tactics of abusers. And I'm a survivor of sexual assault. And I haven't told many people that in my life. But when we go through trauma compounds on each other. And so whether you had a negligent or, a neglectful parent, or whether you had someone who was verbally abusive to you, whether you are a survivor of abuse, whether you experience any sort of trauma in your life, small to large, these episodes can compound on one another. And I had a lot of thoughts. You have a lot of thoughts, I think, when you're in a situation like that. And like also one of those thoughts that I had was, I just happened to, be a spiritual person and be raised in that context. And I really just felt like, if this is the plan for me, then people will be able to take it from here. I had a lot of thoughts, but that was the thought that I had about you all. I felt that if this was the journey that my life was taking, that I felt that things were going to be okay. And that, I had fulfilled my purpose. Anyways, sorry guys. So anyways, my story is not the only story, nor is it the central story. It's one of many stories of what these people did in creating this environment. And these folks who are just trying to tell us to move on are just like pulling the page. They're using the same tactics of every other abuser who just tells you to move on. So we knew in advance that violence was planned. We knew that that violence needed someone to tell the lie. And these senators, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, knew that it was the lie. And they knew that these violent people needed the lie. And they chose, because they thought it would be politically advantageous to them, they chose to tell the lie.
Okay.
You're muted, Rob.
Yeah, that was brutal.
My bad. When we okay, so like when women try to speak out, we need to not only amplify what they're saying, but we need to fucking listen. Speaking of which, we just heard what AOC had to say about that, and I want to specifically address the women that are in the stream. So that would be Vicky, Emily, and Trisha. What are your thoughts on what she just said?
I've been in the same position as her, so I 100% agree wholeheartedly with what she just said. And my daughter was in a position as well. So
Same, been there. And what she's pointing out there, that people are trying to completely just ignore the trauma that these types of situations cause, a fucking problem.
right.
Austin, I know that I said I was going to address the women first, and I don't mean to cut you guys off, but Austin said, I still believe Tara Reid.
I do too.
Me the fuck too. I cannot believe that that was not a nail in the head to Biden's, or a nail in the coffin, sorry, of Biden's campaign. How the fuck wasn't it? How did we allow another rapist into the White House? Men have no business denying these women. I would believe my wife, my sister, my mother, any woman, because it's the right thing to do. Absolutely. And that's why I added this section to this stream. It's important.
Talk about those things without somebody sitting there and literally questioning you and basically your integrity and your truthfulness by, you know, like one of the things that I literally heard from someone who I considered a friend, who was a mutual friend of me and a certain ex. Some of you people know this motherfucker. That motherfucker saying that he couldn't see this motherfucker behaving in that manner. And I'm like, that's because you haven't dated him. And that was coming from a friend. You know, like when we have people constantly looking at victims and going, well, you know, how do you fucking prove that this person's really like that? What do I need to do? Bust out a camera while the motherfucker's punching me in the mouth?
Right. In the situation with my daughter, I had kind of the same thing. Like she was my best friend. She was my best friend for years. And the boy that he raped my daughter was the son of the guy that I was dating at the time. And he took his son's side over my daughter and was calling my daughter a whore and all these other nasty fucking words.
Hell no.
And her husband, my best friend's husband, was his friend, and they took his side. And she still to this day will go to my daughter's job because she's a waitress and sit in her section and call herself her aunt to my daughter. And my daughter's like, my mom and me have zero to do with you after that. Like she doesn't get it. She doesn't care. She thinks that because she's not associating with him anymore, that everything's supposed to be okay between us. It's not. It adds more trauma to my daughter every time you fucking go there. Like every time.
Right. Like coming at the victim and attacking them for having been attacked is compounding that trauma. And that's the last fucking thing that any of us need. And I really need to take this moment to point out that I am yet to meet any woman who I've had this conversation with who has not also experienced this.
Very, very, very factual.
I don't know any women who have not been raped or sexually assaulted in some way, shape, or form. And I know a lot of people. In this, this is a very emotional subject for me because I've experienced it multiple times, and every woman who I know, and some men too, have experienced being on the fucking receiving end of this abuse. Not just from their attacker, but from others around them who should be being supportive and understanding. Even if they can't understand because they haven't experienced it themselves, where the fuck is their compassion?
I agree. I wanted to just interject real quick to say you don't have to apologize for getting emotional or passionate about this. You're addressing an important problem.
It's one of the few things that will bring me to tears out of frustration and anger for every person whose story I've heard and the things they've experienced and how the people around them have compounded that with treating them like they did something wrong. I don't give a shit what you were wearing. I don't give a shit what you do not ask. Right. There's no excuse for it. And we live in a society that instead of addressing the behavior of the predators is looking at us like, well, why were you dressed like that? Why were you there? Motherfucker, because I'm a fucking human being who has the right to go about my business and do whatever the fuck I want without having to worry about, oh, my ex showed up at this party and slipped something in the one beer that I had and drugged me. I was out. I didn't fucking know what the fuck was happening till it was happening. I came to for a matter of seconds, and that's all I even remember of it. For that time.
Wow.
Do you, I'm going to ask you, because you're a woman having been in the situation too, do you think it has anything to do with like our parents' generations and their parents and the don't ask, don't tell? It doesn't leave this family and everything was always protected?
Yes. And it's because they felt ashamed and they were trying to make us feel ashamed.
Yeah.
You had a thought there?
I did. I forgot what it was. It'll come back. It's okay. Continue.
It was a big thought in your head too, Rob, because you were just, dang.
I hope you're
okay. I remember what it was. So essentially, we as a society, we as a chauvinistic white society,
white male,
tend to dismiss women for whatever bullshit excuse that we can find. We tend to teach women to dress more modestly instead of teaching fucking men how not to rape.
It drives me to that point of wondering, like, do we need to just start cutting off dicks and asking questions later? Because that's what I teach my nieces, is if somebody tries to do this to you, cut their fucking dick off and ask questions later, because I don't care what it takes, protect yourself by any means possible that you can fucking do. And I have also taught them that it literally takes 3 pounds of pressure to grip and rip and remove a dick.
Remove a dick.
Remove but I wanted and remove a dick. So I wanted to point out that Karl Marx, for example, advocated for a well-armed proletariat, right? So, okay, so the point is if somebody is trying to fucking rape you, you should be able to reach into your pocket and grab something to defend yourself. The Second Amendment is supposed to guarantee us that freedom, but the poor don't have access to guns. Women are generally discouraged from being involved with guns. There's a lot of problems pertaining to self-defense, and that being said, it's sad that the reality is that we would rather teach women how to defend themselves than teach our sons to be respectful of women.
But what else are we teaching our kids in general when so many women who have defended ourselves have landed in jail for defending ourselves against something that is, even if it doesn't take your physical being life, it still destroys a huge part of your life. It kills a part of your fucking soul when that happens. That is self-defense. Nobody deserves to go to prison for disallowing a motherfucker from raping them.
Absolutely. And actually, we've seen like reaction from courts and cops alike who have done exactly that. They have locked up women for, murdering their attackers, and that is a problem in and of itself. That's why I brought up the idea of a well-armed proletariat. Marx said that any attempt to disarm any of the public should be frustrated by force if necessary. And I think that if policing agencies are going to lock up or otherwise harm people that were defending themselves, then we need to take a stand against that. There is no reason that any woman should go to prison for doing whatever she had to do to get out of a situation where she was being raped. It's completely unacceptable.
I agree, Rob. Allow me, please, to taint the moment with some relevant news. Okay. A gentleman by the name of Lindell, I don't know who he is, where he's for, but he's a conservative, has made claims that the Capitol rioters were drugged by Antifa sluts. These are the people
Christ.
that perpetuate these belief systems. Okay, the rioters were hypnotized by Antifa temptresses who hid psychoactive drugs in their vaginas. Now, if you look at the video, many of the rioters had crazed looks in their eyes. This is his defense. This is his claim. Now, there are people
And that's
that
his only
believe
piece
this.
of evidence.
Those people drive cars. They own guns. They vote. Those people breed. I mean, it's scary.
That's an understatement. So, continuing on women's rights, the next story is about Marilyn Manson. And honestly, the reason I put this in here is for exactly what I'm about to say. I want to preface this by saying that I'm glad that musicians have witnessed these types of abuse, are speaking up and amplifying these women's voices. But I have to ask, where the fuck were they? Where the fuck was their spine when this shit was happening?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I got a big problem with music culture in this particular space. It's been a long time, right, that we've basically been carting virgins in on silver platters to musicians, and nobody seemed to care, and not even during Me Too. I mean, how is Mick Jagger not canceled? How is most of rock and roll not canceled? I mean,
It's not just rock and roll either.
Whatever,
it's pop,
music,
it's pop,
whatever,
it's R&B,
whatever.
it's music in general. It is the music industry in general. I want to specify that I mean the corporate industry.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to. I've been waiting for this, and I don't know if this is going to be what blows it open. But
Dumping his ex in the trunk and killing her, with his toddler in tow. Things like this of abuse of women has been downright fucking celebrated in a lot of forms of music.
Correct.
And it's a fucking problem. It's feeding this of, telling people, oh, well, it's okay, we accept this. No, we fucking don't.
I want to point out, I haven't lived in Michigan for 2 years, but I'm still, not as much as I would like to be, but I'm still somewhat involved with the social media presence of the music scene in Michigan. And prior to COVID, when the scene was, I don't want to say thriving, but when the scene was a thing, a lot of a significant effort to push out musicians and fans alike that are accepting violence against women. And that needs to, I'm hoping that this is going to be the start of a mainstream conversation about it and simply not allowing it anymore.
Silent observers are contributing just as much to the problem as the predators themselves.
I mean, to put it in MLK's words, there's nothing. They want to pretend things like these, like this don't happen generally. They, if we just don't talk about it, it'll go away. That's not how it works. We need to talk about it. We need to be militant about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't happen to QAnon. It didn't happen to Trump.
Right. Ignoring the problem makes the problem grow unfettered like a fucking cancer. What's up?
Emily asked if you're wearing the same pants, but it's not.
Oh, they are pretty close.
They are pretty
Those
close,
are cute.
though, yeah.
I dig your pants.
I'm sorry, that was off topic as hell. So basically, the reason that we're talking about this is last week, Evan Rachel Wood and 4 other women accused Marilyn Manson of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Wood famously testified to Congress in 2018, detailing an abusive relationship to advocate for a sexual assault survivors bill. She initially left her ex-partner unnamed, but came forward on February 1st identifying Marilyn Manson as her abuser. And this statement is coming from Wes Borland. You might know him as the guitarist of Limp Bizkit. He was in Manson's band for 9 months, and he said, Marilyn Manson, I was in the band for 9 months. He's not a great guy. Every single thing that people have said about him is fucking true. So relax about the allegations towards the women. Like when people say bad things about these women that are coming after him right now, fuck off. They are speaking the truth. I'm sorry to everyone on this podcast right now who doesn't like this, but that guy, he's amazingly talented. I don't really think he's that talented. Moving on. But he's fucked up and he needs to be put in check and he needs to get sober and he needs to come to terms with his demons. He is a bad fucking guy. I was there when he was with Evan Rachel Wood. I was at his house. It's not fucking cool. That's all I'm going to say about it. If anyone is coming after these girls, like going, you blah, blah, blah this and you blah, blah, blah that, fuck you. That's all I'm going to say. Sorry to take this to a dark place, but that guy is canceled. Goodbye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
We've heard from Wes Borland, but what about Corey Feldman?
I mean, but I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. We're hearing from Wes Borland about how he was there at the house.
Right,
Why didn't he stop it?
Right. Why did his fist not meet Marilyn Manson's face in that fucking moment? How do you stand there and watch something like that happen and not do anything?
Well, there's a whole issue with white knighting, right? Too, you know, I had an encounter where a friend of mine, his sister, was in pretty dire straits, big trouble at a party, as happens, as every girl on this call and every girl listening to this meeting, rather, this live cast will attest to. So I got her out of there. You know, I made up some fucking hustle and threw one leg and one arm over each of my shoulders and walked her out of the house. And man, them guys wanted to beat my ass. I literally dropped her on the porch and ring and ran like you would in a frat movie or something. and years after this, I mean, we're talking, guys, this was long before any of you were born. Years after this, I got accused of white knighting. So
What is white knighting?
uh
I mean, I can
I
form
think
it
what
in
the
my
kids say is
imagination.
Captain Save-A-Ho.
yeah,
It's
no, no,
I was just gonna say that.
no, it's not that. White knighting has more to do with uh I would never treat you that way, Queen, and just, with the fedora and I'd never be. Yeah, they actually detract from the problem. Is what that means.
So it's a good thing then.
It's not necessarily a good thing because it still puts ownership and impetus upon women. It still makes women responsible ultimately, in my opinion. And so does the court system.
I agree with
So
that.
does the court system. So does the, what was she doing at a party? What was she wearing? That kind of crap. There's a whole lot of things that have to be changed before we can even begin to have reasonable conversations about this. The reality is the whole foundation of what Wes Borland had to say was whether or not we should actually listen to this person and give merit to her allegation. Let's just I'm just, reality check whether or not he intervened or whether or not his fist met Manson's face is irrelevant. The point he was trying to establish was that we should probably listen to her. Well, no shit. And that's a huge problem right now, in my humble opinion.
Well, I mean, I don't have any personal experiences on the matter, except that, for a lot of people that don't think it's out there, I myself, when, I don't know, maybe I was 2, I don't fucking know, but I was raised by women. I was raised by my mom and my grandma. And at no point was there really a lot of like negative male influence. There wasn't much male influence at all, but I mean, especially not this chauvinistic ownership mentality. But they didn't really push a lot of the civil rights knowledge on me, especially at fucking 2 years old. And someone brought up my mother owning a car. And I told her flat out, I was like, women can own cars? I was surprised. And the only way I would come to that conclusion, the only way a 2-year-old would have that mentality if his parents didn't put it on him, is if it were in the culture, if it were in the society. And
Yeah.
if it, I mean, of course, there may be a few other factors. I mean, within the family, there are other family members there, but, largely I think it's the culture.
It really is, and it goes back a long ways. And I'll just point out one example here that I've even had a woman ask me a similar question. I was down east a few years ago and went to this restaurant that had campground, all that, bar, live music, the whole nine. And of course, I ended up making friends because social butterfly. So fast forward a couple hours, and we were actually back over at their motorhome party and having a few drinks after the bar closed down. And the wife asked me, she didn't realize at first that my friend who had come there for dinner with me had his own motorhome and I had my own motorhome. She thought we were a couple or something, and we're like, no. And she's like, wait a minute. You have your own RV? How did that happen? What you drive that thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How that happened is I took some money and I bought it and I drove it away.
Gosh, how do you take that lady brain and apply it to that gigantic piece of complex machinery?
Well, I had her cracking up, and I don't think she meant it as like an insult or anything like that. She just is of an older generation, and it legit surprised her. And I was like, honey, I don't drive it with my pussy.
Well, that's common, right?
That's
You
safe.
know, there's a
That's
lot
good
of
to know
issues.
for safety.
Right.
Anyway,
Maybe
Oh,
not.
things are real.
Well, so there's a whole nother. I love that you guys. You know, I've been trying to be good in this podcast and not say anything too wild. But
what the fuck, man?
We don't
Yeah, I
have
know,
to be
right?
good here. We are here to be fucking wild. Go for it.
Well, I was gonna say that the tech bros from Silicon Valley were too busy sucking the adrenochrome out of baby dicks, but I didn't say that. But I think,
You
well,
gotta
here's
hit
the thing.
record first, man. Holy shit.
The reality here is it's going to be the same thing with gender identity, right? And non-binary versus binary, etc. There's a bunch of us that aren't going to get it. We'll try, you know, especially the Gen Xers, right? The Boomers, I don't know so much if they're really listening that much. Some are. There's some very woke ones out there, even more woke than you would imagine. But the Gen X guys, let us catch up. Let us catch up. Right. So I don't mind that stuff too much. It's enculturation, I call it. And I didn't make that term up. We're enculturated to the very fabric of our beings to reinforce these roles, these norms, right? So, right down to the clothing that women wear, with the fake pockets and the
No,
buttons
you're
on the
right.
wrong side,
You're right. Yeah.
Well, we wear that too, though.
So, I mean, just to try to keep this flowing, because I mean, we've
please, don't let me disrupt it.
the next. No, you're not being disruptive, Dean. Come on. Anyway, so
Rascal.
the next segment is Power of a Strike, and I think it's one of our most important segments, and it's probably my personal favorite. Anyway, so
We're gonna pollute our lungs.
yeah, we're actually going out to smoke. I'm getting on the Zoom on my phone.
Great.
I'm not taking over this time.
I mean, I think Dean can.
I can.
Where the story should be the medics in Myanmar.
Yeah, the strike. Yep.
Yep.
You can take us on your phone.
We are.
Chat.
We are. Yeah, we're not leaving. We're taking you with us outside.
I think that's perfectly fine.
Stay with us.
So what's being referenced here is a story from Al Jazeera. You guys remember when Al Jazeera was considered fake news long before fake news was fake news? That's interesting. Frontline workers from more than 70 medical facilities across the country announced a walkout in response to the putsch. Putsch being, obviously, I know you've seen the dancing lady memes, maybe not. If not, then I'll put one in the comments of this live stream, whereby the Myanmar military recently overthrew the government, placed most of the party, Aung Suu Kyi's party, and including her, back under arrest. And the frontline health workers have gone on strike. It happened, oh geez, almost a week ago now, I think. Yeah, okay, it says right here, Wednesday. Right. The development raised fresh concerns about Myanmar's coronavirus response and vaccination program, which began on the 27th, a few days before the actual coup took place. So um, I think there's two segments to this, and I'm going to stop and let others speak. But one, I'll just speak real quick. I think one is as it relates to, we're still just digesting that Myanmar has had a coup, is back under literally the old military regime, the same friends and some even family members that held Aung San Suu Kyi in custody for 20 years cumulatively, not in a stretch. That's the first issue here, and obviously health and healthcare workers' right to strike. Is it enough? I mean, people are pissed at Biden because he's considering sanctions, right, against Myanmar for this behavior. This is rough business, but it does illustrate Rob's point and something that I will maintain. Uh, Labor has the power. Labor has the power, and their cases are rising. So it will have an effect. It's pretty provocative from the standpoint, if you think about it, that if the healthcare workers are striking, that means people will die. That's pretty grim, guys. I'm not saying it's wrong, but holy shit, are any of us willing to lay the stakes down that hard and that real?
Okay. That may be what
I actually
has to
just want to piggyback off of what you were saying. Abraham Lincoln, I forget what year it was, but he said in the State of the Union that that all power comes from labor, and all power should remain with labor. Sounds very Marxist, doesn't it?
Totally.
Wasn't there even a direct quote from Marx in one of his speeches? Like,
that was an indirect.
Verbatim? Okay.
That was an indirect quote.
Okay.
But yes, that's same situation. But I mean, that's the point, though, is that how have our well, we already established that too, I guess. How our political system has become so reactionary. It was established as a reactionary government. So I don't even know why I said that. Sorry, I got off topic. I went down a rabbit hole. Take it back, Dean.
No, you're good. You know, and it's not like, this isn't like one of the other kind of what I would call as Eastern Asian countries like Vietnam or Thailand or even Bhutan, whereby, you know, we can drop aid and workers can come in. Myanmar is really closed off, man. These guys, I think it was, the article actually mentions that when they had a pretty devastating hurricane, they let us put the aid on the docks, and that stuff sat there. I mean, these guys they're very exclusionary. They're not collaborative, right? So this is a big deal, right? Especially in an authoritarian regime that just changed. Would it have changed without Trump's rhetoric? I don't know. I really don't. That's a bit outside of my ability to comprehend, to be frank with you. But yeah, I don't know. This is tough business.
That's why we all have slightly different understandings of different topics, and that's how we, you know,
end up seeing the whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. No, I understood. So next, I guess we can probably go ahead and move on. We next on the item on this list is labor, as it relates to the Orange County students who plan to strike, right? So that flips the script considerably. 16,000 students across the district in Orange County are being asked to, by either not attending Zoom classes or skipping classrooms.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is
brief interjection. I just want to say solemn motherfucking darity.
Right. You know, bottom line is that Teachers should not be forced into the classrooms until they're vaccinated, and that is the message. They
And the kids are.
kids are down, and I think it should send a very strong message that should resonate in this country. But and as you pointed out earlier, Rob, in the article states that Governor Newsom in California has prioritized students, in other words, classified them or reclassified them as healthcare workers or frontline workers. I do think that's happened in a whole lot of other states. I don't think it's happened even in Michigan. So here we are. What is this, February 8th? February 8th, we're sending students and teachers into classrooms in a global pandemic that is spread by human being contact through the air, and that's okay. And that's okay. So maybe the children need to take charge of their own destiny here.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
just fucking went. But to kind of add to this, last week we talked about how a recent study showed that children in a school setting are responsible for super spreader events. Just like with any other illness, children are little virus reactors.
Correct. Correct.
So it's important, in my eyes, that we not only vaccinate the teachers before we send the kids back to school, but the kids themselves.
Well, it looks like they're saying, and they agree with you, and I really hope that this sticks. This is something that I really hope we can get excited about, as we have been able. We have seen in past, right, whereby very small scale strikes move the needle. This has been why about 4 years now. We've been seeing regular teachers union strikes that have been very effective, highly effective, in fact, particularly in Minnesota and Iowa. Kansas, California, student strike. That's a flip. That's a new twist to me.
I don't think that it's something that happens enough. I have read, I can't think of any specific instances, but I have read about student strikes happening in other countries. I have never read about a student strike happening in the US, and I'm fucking ecstatic about it.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agree. I'll rapidly move along to India, right? As you may or may not be aware, there is a small bit of unrest among farmers in India.
A small bit. a quarter of a billion people turned out for the 24-hour general strike.
Correct. Can you? I just get your mind around that for a moment. We often think of China as being the most populous nation on earth, and ideally it is, to the best of our knowledge. At 1.58 billion people, roughly, India has 1.50 billion people. In our lifetimes, I believe, will see India supersede every country on earth as most populous. So it does not in the least bit surprise me at 225 million people showed up, or a quarter of a billion people showed up. Not even remotely.
And like, to put it in perspective, the population of our entire fucking country is about 350 million people, and India has 250 million out protesting. Let that sink in. Look at the power of numbers.
Yes, look at the power of numbers. But I also wanted to point out that, like, American media has generally avoided covering the protests in India because there's a large socialist backing and a large socialist mentality to these farmers that are striking.
We have failed to cover Indian news, period, in this country. It literally isn't even on our radar.
You're right,
magnitude of what's happening
didn't hit our radar. No, they just didn't want to have to put up an article where they're defending people or even giving people a platform that are flying hammer and sickle flags. That's my opinion, anyway.
Well, the story at hand is that the Indian government has instituted, or I shouldn't say the Indian government, I should say the government surrounding Delhi has shut the internet off, right? This is an old tactic we've seen back to Arab Spring, whereby they believe they can quell insurrection or unrest by shutting people's internet off, and probably not working. Not only is it not working, but I'm quite sure people are finding workarounds.
Oh yeah, I mean, in Russia, for example, which I don't know why this hasn't made it into one of the streams, but Russia was trying to remove live streams,
Yes.
and the people of Russia retaliated by posting so many live streams that they couldn't
broke the
possibly.
system. Yep. And by the way,
And that goes back to the power of numbers and the power of a strike.
Right. And to add to that, Austin just said it would be amazing if a quarter of our people could go out and protest the solidarity. The effect it would have on our government would just be outstanding. They would literally have to do what we asked if that happened or will happen. On fucking point.
I think this is so important, this issue here, and the way that the Modi administration has handled this entire affair. This one is so important. It absolutely needs to be parking lotted and discussed in detail. What they're doing, and this is normal, right? I've got a lot of folks whose country of origin is India, and they have told me many times what we are seeing in politics in the United States has been done over and over and over and over again in India. We need only look to India for a guidance as to what to expect. And God damn it, if Trump wasn't elected right after I was told that. So we probably should dedicate a fair amount of time to examining this. I think it's super critical. It's probably the most important news event, or most important gathering of individuals that we've seen since pandemic. This is uber important, guys. This one here, in my humble opinion. If folks aren't aware of what is going on in India, I encourage you to hit Google News and do some looking and thinking about what's going on there, and find ways that we can maybe perhaps support them. Imagine that. There's been a few deaths too. I think I've read at least a couple of hundred people have died as a result of these, not just due to violence, but other mishaps. So, and I'm willing to drag one of those people that I know that who's India is their country of origin, and they would probably have insights that we would never know, because these activities are so underreported right now by our American media or Western media.
Okay, I'm back inside.
Worker benefits.
So we probably should start working on wrapping this up.
Well, we can keep going, and we can also publish these notes and all the links within. We can make this available to the viewers as well. Now that we have a medium to do so. So if there's ever a topic that we didn't catch, you'll be able to find what we're referencing and do your own reading and research.
So before we go, though, there's a video that I have that is on this topic that, I mean, it shows how many people showed up at this specific, they stormed the Red Fort in India, in Delhi. And, well, I mean, I'm just going to let the video speak for itself. But this isn't even the big strike. This isn't the one with 250 million people. This is the one.
This is Delhi.
Frustrated and angry, thousands of farmers occupy India's most prominent landmark, the iconic Red Fort, blocking highways and roads. They say new agricultural laws being introduced by the government will devastate their livelihoods and favor large companies. What began as protests 2 months ago has turned into a movement, with farmers marching into the center of India's capital. In the outskirts of New Delhi, police fired tear gas when a group of farmers breached security barricades with their tractors. The demonstrations coincide with India's Republic Day. As farmers rallied nearby, this is what another side of the capital looked like on Tuesday morning, a festive display of the country's cultural diversity and military strength.
The entire country watches Delhi on Republic Day, So when the farmers roll their tractors into Delhi, then the message goes out that the farmers' fight is not yet over. It's just started. We are fighting for our rights by entering the city.
Opposition to 3 agricultural laws passed in November is challenging the authority of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The reforms will relax rules on the sale, price, and storage of farm produce. The government says the changes will boost incomes and private investments. But farmers say they're an invitation for conglomerates to take over agriculture in India.
We're calling for the Modi government to take back these 3 laws so that the farmers get their rights back. The government has passed these laws without any discussions, without any thought. They just imposed them.
About half of the country's 1.3 billion people work in agriculture. The government's offer to delay the new laws for 18 months have been rejected by farmers. They say they will continue protesting until the laws are fully repealed. Katia Lopez-Odayan, Al Jazeera.
Okay, so like, can I just go ahead and say that is fucking beautiful. Did you all notice the protesters rocking that fucking bus, man?
Dude, right.
Yeah, India is a very different place when it comes to things of this nature.
They're wild. Where are those videos with the dudes like trick riding cars and shit in the desert?
That's not India.
That's not India?
No, that's usually that's usually one of the oil nations.
Oh, well, those dudes are rad too.
Well, real quick, I'll tell you a quick anecdote. When I was younger, man, and I started to work around people whose country of origin was India. One time I asked, they would come and go home, or they would travel, and I would say, how, you had a hard time when you leave home, right? Do they give you a hard time? Like here, customs wants to know why you're traveling, what you're doing, what your intent is, who what where you'll be staying for how long. So is there any like almost what I would call criticism of you working here, living here? And they would say no, because. Like, why? And they all laughed because I was with about 15 or 16 people at that time, and they all laughed at me and said because they would drag him out from behind the desk and into the street and beat his ass. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, as much as I don't like the idea of that violence, boy, that threat that if you act like a jackass, you're going to be held accountable instantly is kind of appealing.
It's empowering.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I just kind of want to try to wrap this up by saying that I agree with what Austin was saying about solidarity marches. I think that what we need, specifically in the U.S., where these types of protests don't really fucking happen, is we need something that is like, I'm not going to necessarily say it's something that is, but we need something that is like if Occupy met Black Lives Matter, met the Yellow Vest movement. We need a nonpartisan movement that is willing to take to the streets and continue to fight until the battle is won. And of course, that's
hey, let's get with let's figure out where the Antifa sluts are, and maybe they can help us.
Dean's onto something there, dude. He's onto it. I mean, wow.
I mean, because obviously they know how to get shit done.
Dean, you're my hero sometimes. I just wanted to say that.
Hey, Occupy informed the movements that followed it, right? We gave a lot of people a blueprint on how to organize and how to effectively communicate rapidly spreading ideas, right? And if you think for one moment that we didn't move the needle, we did.
Oh, we definitely moved the needle, but
I agree with you. We need something.
I don't think that we moved it enough.
Yeah. Well, if we would have done Occupy during Trump, maybe it would have been a little bit different. I don't know.
A lot more of us would have ended up in jail, probably.
That's true. I agree with that.
Fuck. Man.
Shouts
Things
out
were
to
strange for a minute then. I
yeah.
mean, we had fucking Homeland Security setting up an office in the building across the street from our camp to spy
I
on
forgot
us.
about that.
Dude, one of them tried to approach me as I was arriving back at camp. I had been videotaping some stuff at one of the protests, and the fucker waited for me to get my camera gear put in my trunk before I walked across the street to the camp, and he pulls up right in front of me trying to block me from going across the street and threatened me with was it Senate Bill 1867, the one that provided for indefinite detention
That's right.
so-called terrorists. And I was just like, First Amendment, fuck you. You're holding up traffic. You need to go. Like, don't try to intimidate me with that shit. We just delivered a fucking copy of the Constitution to Senator Stabenow's office and left her aide with a message to give her to read the motherfucker so she could find out where she had committed treason by voting yes on that fucking bill. Alphabet men ain't gonna fucking scare us. Get the fuck out of here. Things were weird. I didn't think we were gonna get that kind of attention from Homeland Security just because we were protesting, but that's the world we live in.
Occupy Flint was the longest occupation in any city in the country, the most dangerous city in the country without incident. Don't forget that. We accomplished something that no one else in the world did.
Right. And I'm pretty sure we're the only ones that were fully openly armed at all times too. A lot of the more neo-lib people were bitching about that, not wanting us to do that at our camp. And it's like, wait a minute, you need to understand, we are in downtown Flint. And we are about security, and we are also about the Second Amendment. Like, yes, we are mostly leftists, but that doesn't mean we are against gun ownership or protecting ourselves and other people's lives. And, the city, I think they didn't fuck with us because they saw that we weren't being, ridiculous about it or anything. We were just open carrying as is our right. And there was incidents that happened, like a shooting at a bar up the street, where our security team responded faster than the fucking police did. So at least for a short period of time, even they appreciated our presence there.
It was a short period of time, but on Devil's Night, actually, Mayor Walling and the chief of police thanked us for being there. Like as part of their ceremonial fucking patrol of downtown Flint, because, that's where the arsons happen. They made it a point to come to us and thank us. And I do remember
And we didn't
the General
just
Assembly at one point tried to ban people from carrying weapons, and I was happy to see that was very quickly blocked by 85 or 90% of the people that were there.
that measure was aimed at a specific individual, to be fair.
Yes, it was. Yes, and he was, whether or not he agreed on a lot of the left-leaning things that we discussed, the individual that you're talking about was one of the most important individuals to how that camp, I don't want to say how it started, obviously, but what it became was largely his influence.
Good or bad, agreed. And second thing is to remember that we didn't just consume resources. For those people listening to this, calling for posterity, we raised more than $2,000 for charity and the homeless, and we also collected 3,500 pounds of food for local food banks and other charities.
As well as coats.
We sustained ourselves.
Gloves, hats, things like that.
Correct.
We were making sure actually got into the hands of the homeless and the poor who needed them.
I just feel it's our responsibility to keep this record set straight, because there's a lot of I'll just say confusion about what we did and why we did it and what our impact was on the community.
So we were trying to lead by example of this is what mutual aid means, people.
Correct. I think what we did was a resounding success. In fact, across the world, and particularly in the United States, I think that our movement was by far the most successful and honorable. We have nothing but to look back on it with pride. And that's my 2 cents. So with that, anybody have anything, any commercials, anything to plug?
Yeah,
that.
Okay, well,
We gonna share
I'd love
your-
to ask Josh where I can find the constitutional fetishist news groups or whatever, but he left.
The heat got hot. He left the kitchen.
It's important to talk about, but frankly, in my mind, it's a mark of immaturity. Can't move that needle.
Oh, we need to.
Labor has the power to make change. Not
Hold on.
Absolutely.
Austin said something. Let me open it. Austin also brought up things like Medicare for All, a UBI, childcare with no out-of-pocket expense. We don't have vacation time. We don't have paid leave. These are all things that I think that whatever movement starts need to focus on.
Well, you need a manifesto. Who wants to volunteer to create the manifesto? We already have a good head start.
I mean, dude, I will do my best to be Marx if somebody wants to be my Angles.
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. I don't throw challenges out without willing to accept them myself. I think we need a manifesto.
I agree.
I'm down to
I agree. Austin also said that he thinks one of the main reasons that they're not giving us Medicare for All or paid leave or free childcare is because they know that that would take the burdens that poor people face and it would unchain them and allow them to go out and protest and strike. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It's interesting, as far as United or as far as single payer healthcare. Really, it surprised me that the corporate lobby hasn't figured out that if we can do away with privatized insurance, it might take a financial burden off them. They haven't figured that out yet. We haven't been able to demonstrate that to them effectively. You definitely have to speak to those people in their own language, but I agree with you, Austin, 100%, to be honest.
Absolutely.
You keep people in that keep people in that hamster wheel, and they're not going to worry about revolution. So I don't have anything to plug other than the forwearemany.org website, our many social media accounts that you can follow and join in. Please contribute to the conversation as you can, and also look out for us next week, and look out for us for any impromptu live streams that we might be doing.
I guarantee there will be at least one more because we still have a lot of information from last week to cover.
Correct. Who's left with us? Vicky, you have anything to plug?
Nope.
Shout out to everybody who listened to the stream, everybody on the call. Sterling, anything to plug?
Nah, dude.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us again tonight. This has been another beautiful discussion.
Amen.
Love you guys.
Yeah, put us in your headphones and let us put you to sleep at nights. We're building up a body of content.
Revolutionary thoughts, permeating your brain as you rest.
Amen.
Thank you, Emily, for your technical support. And we'll see you guys shortly.
Input on the matters of science that we discussed early in the stream.
Absolutely.
Correct. That was great to have a subject matter expert on hand online and prepared to contribute meaningfully. Thank you.
It was. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Ben.
Yep.
And thank you, Austin, for joining us.
Even though he couldn't join us. Yeah.
That was dope of you, bro.
I think it's also important to thank Natalie in the comments too. She's been pretty active.
Very much so.
Yes,
true, and she was last week too.
Your commentary, yes. Yes. These are the discussions that we need to open up with more and more people and have, some growth happen here, and that is our goal, to grow together.
Amen. I think that is a very good note to end on. I hope everybody has a good night. Peace.